The gaming world is no stranger to platformer mascots that faded away into obscurity, only for emulation and crusty videos like this one to be the things that are keeping those memories alive. Sometimes revivals do take place, and when they do, and when they're done really well, it is super cool, dude. Nothing like giving second chances, you know? So, yeah. Why does Rayman get so much disrespect? Ubisoft, buddy, pal, friend. What are you doing? I won't even begin to go through all of the ridiculous things this company has done over the years. This is not the place for that. It's just baffled me for the longest time that Ubisoft, one of the biggest video game publishers out there, just never really figured out how to best capitalize on one of their earliest mascots in a meaningful way, outside of like, I don't know, popping up in Brawlhalla, cool, becoming a trophy in Smash Wii U for some reason, never figured that one out. Or, more obviously, sacrificing him to our rabid overlords. It is about time this franchise had some respect put back on its name. Ubisoft can go around and continue to pretend like this franchise, one of their earliest star players, doesn't exist as we get our millionth Just Dance game. But today I'm going to try to change that narrative. I have been a fan of this dude ever since the beginning, and while it's very easy to see his name trend on Twitter whenever a new game doesn't get announced, happens far too often, I'm not a fan of that, I thought it would be fun to take a look back and see how we got to where we are today. Rayman's really good, Ubisoft. Please start caring about him. I'm calling this the rise and fall of Rayman, but realistically this is more so about multiple rises and falls, because the company never really knew what to do with him. He's a poor abused boy. First things first, it's important to understand that this franchise is sorta split into two different camps. We got the main series with the original trilogy and the UbiArt Engine duology, all stemming from the creative mind of one Michel Ancel, aka the creative director behind Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie. That's real, that's a real thing. And then the rest of the series, where Ubisoft consistently thought, yeah, you know, why not? Let's take the Rayman 1 engine and make an educational game out of it. Let's make Rayman Golf for old Java-based mobile phones, you know, Rayman's favorite sport, I guess? Let's make a Game Boy Advance version of Rayman 3 that plays like Rayman 1, uses the plot and level tropes from Rayman 2, and overall has like next to nothing to do with the actual Rayman 3. Dude, there's a Rayman cartoon. Like, what? Following the success of Rayman 2, there was an attempt to take the character and make an animated series out of him. There's really not much to it. Basically, Rayman is a circus performer on the run with his weird and incredibly disturbing looking friends. I still have nightmares about Lac Mac to this day. And shenanigans ensue while being chased by the law. That's it. None of this, like absolutely none of this, is being pulled from any of the video game lore. That pasta guy, not in the games. He's just here. This entire cartoon is just random for the sake of being random. I've only ever gotten to see 4 episodes of this show because, well, only 4 actually got released. This was supposed to be a full 26 episode deal, but it was canceled before episode 5 was completed. Didn't stop them from giving this uncompleted cartoon a retail release at the time. Do you see what I mean about this franchise being weird? I mean, ultimately, it should really surprise nobody that Ubisoft isn't really the best at decision making, but it's still just so confusing. Whenever the time came for Rayman to go on a brand new adventure, he knocked it out of the park every single time. It's probably easy as an outsider to see a platformer trilogy with 1 side-scroller and 2 3D ones and think, oh yeah, you know, just like Gex. But I can assure you, Rayman is way better than Gex. If you want platformers that feature playable characters that feel really satisfying to control, stories filled with an incredibly diverse set of charming side characters, and these large, dreamy landscapes that occasionally dive deeper into nightmares more than anything, typically accompanied by magical soundtracks, this is the series for you. Now, Rayman 2, The Great Escape in particular, this is one of the best 3D platformers of all time. Some of the most richly detailed worlds this genre has to offer, super fluid controls for any of the mechanics the game throws at you, a really good amount of Alice in Wonderland-like surrealism sprinkled here and there, and you get mountable rockets with legs that sound like horses. Right on, man, giddy up. Not to mention the green cartridge too, man. Ooh, that's nice. To think that friggin' Tonic Trouble was basically the prototype for this game as well? You want to talk about a massive jump in quality, man? Well, oh boy, there is certainly a reason why we'll never see Ed again, I can tell you that much. Who even cares about him? Probably the first time you've heard of Tonic Trouble before. I did a video on it years ago. Doesn't even matter. Not a good game. The story is also about slavery, which is absolutely bonkers. Admiral Razorbeard is going on a tirade, enslaving all of the inhabitants and the yellow lums in the land. And there's this one scene where you see Razorbeard eat one of the lums, and you watch the 1,000 yellow lum count drop to 999. That is crazy. That scarred me when I was a kid. But even then, man, the weirdness continues. Rayman 2 released primarily on 4 different consoles: Nintendo 64, PlayStation 1, Dreamcast, and PlayStation 2. And each of these versions are different. The 64 and Dreamcast versions are largely similar outside of obvious graphical differences, but the Dreamcast version features a different Isle of Doors level select screen, as well as featuring some exclusive minigames. As a result, the Dreamcast version ends up being the superior of all of them, and then we have the PS1 version. Oh man, this one not only looks worse, but also has heavily truncated level designs and 200 less yellow lums. Not really sure why this version exists, except for probably contractual obligations, but not the best way to play this game. Although, deep within this version as an unlockable is a playable prototype of Rayman 2. That's really cool. This was initially when it was going to be a more proper sequel to the first game. There's not much to this bit, honestly, but there are a couple of new gimmicks that weren't in the original game, and that's pretty cool. The fact that this is here at all, and only in this version, makes the PS1 Rayman 2 infinitely more interesting. While the PS2 version, which released later, Revolution, ooh, fancy name, features updated graphics as well as a brand new free roaming hub world completely replacing the Isle of Doors that we got before. And both the PS1 and 2 versions have voice acting, which the N64 and Dreamcast lack. They both have totally different voice casts.
I feel weak and my powers have disappeared. I feel weak and my powers have disappeared.
It's so weird, man. The N64 version was ported to the DS, the Dreamcast version was ported to the 3DS, and neither of which have screenshots on the back of the boxes that represent how crusty the games actually look. Got a fantastic game out of this one, but man, Ubisoft, what was all that? Rayman 1, the original, had slightly similar shenanigans with the PlayStation, Jaguar, Saturn, and PC versions, but honestly nowadays I would say you don't even need to bother. Rayman Redemption, it's right there. Alright, so check this out. Rayman Redemption is a fan-made remake of that original adventure, but way better, dude! You got better movement options with all of your abilities unlocked right from the get-go, modified level designs on top of a brand new world, Playtopia, including a level based off of Rayman Brain Games, which is absolutely hilarious, and a ton of quality of life improvements like an unlockable arrow to point you towards collectibles, something the original game desperately needed, considering you needed all of those collectibles just to get to the final boss, something that Redemption also thankfully changed. Now the collectibles are satisfying for completion's sake, and that is way better. It's not every day a fan creation is good enough to completely dethrone the title it's paying homage to, but this absolutely does that. You know that one Metroid fan game, AM2R, a fan game that's so good it's usually in the conversation for some of the best games in the franchise? Well, Rayman Redemption does the same thing, but for that franchise, and that's really cool. Then when it comes to Rayman 3, Hoodlum Havoc, that one thankfully only has one major release with an HD re-release later on, nothing else weird there. And then there's the fact that they tried to market this game in magazines by implying Rayman is really well endowed. Oh my god. And then there's a commercial where he like pees his name in the snow. I can't imagine why this game didn't sell better. This one sort of follows The Great Escape in terms of aesthetics, but the creepiness level has been dramatically reduced. Instead, what we have is a plot about Glowbox eating an evil lum known as a Hoodlum, genius name by the way, and you go on a quest to get it out of his system. And along the way, you bring him to doctors who play air guitar on him. While the game is definitely still fun to play, you know, the platforming is solid, the combat's really engaging, it's all about the point combo system this time around. Every new room brings in a brand new encounter that kind of acts like a mini puzzle. You could just go on in fists ablazing and then knock everything out as you see fit, but sometimes you may want to take a minute to step back and gauge your surroundings to best optimize your score. You do get graded with stars at the end of every segment, but I don't really understand how that point system works out. I feel like sometimes I do everything and then I get like 2 stars. I don't really get it, but it's still fun. You also get a whole new slew of battle fatigue abilities to change up your moveset. From a grappling hook to tornado punches, there's a whole lot of them, and they're always a really nice change of pace when you get them. Overall, Rayman 3, it's fine. I appreciate them doing something different rather than attempting to simply one-up the Great Escape. That probably wasn't going to happen anyway, but it still lacks a lot of the polish the previous games handled so well. Rayman's creator, Michel Ancel, didn't really have anything to do with this one, and it really shows. And after that original trilogy, that was it for a while. Well, kinda. As much as I want to say that was kind of it, and then we just waited a few years for Origins, that didn't necessarily happen. Ubisoft had no issue dragging his name through the mud as much as they possibly could through the very annoying and loud, rabbit-filled mud. The one big spinoff through all of this was Rayman Arena, a sort of multiplayer minigame collection that is actually pretty fun. It's really nonsensical in the grand scheme of things, considering you're doing things like races against some of the most threatening enemies from Rayman 2, and there's not much of a story to tie things together, but gameplay-wise, it ain't bad. The different console releases also offer pretty different experiences. It's bizarre, like Rayman Arena showed up on PS1 as Rayman Rush, where it's more or less the same idea, except it's just racing portions, and it puts this weird, ugly abomination on the cover art. Don't like that thing one bit. Also, the game was called Rayman M in Europe. Like, alright, sure, consistency be damned. But even when Arena jumped from one console to another, there was like a different menu system and whatnot. It's so weird. I'm numb at this point. And also throughout all of this, Rayman actually had a pretty fulfilling life in the Game Boy family too. Rayman 1 and 2 on the Game Boy Color. You know what? They're not bad. Nobody played them, but they're okay. They're based on the backbones of their console counterparts, with clear references in terms of the level theming and the collectibles. And while they're really nothing mind-blowing, in the grand scheme of 2D platformers exclusive to the Game Boy Color, of which is a very, very minuscule list, these are fine. I already mentioned Rayman 3 GBA before, this weird, ugly abomination that just so desperately wants to be Rayman 1 and also Rayman 2, but not Rayman 3. And when it comes to the game itself, man, it's not very good. Level design wise, it's just all over the place. There was not really a whole lot of consistency with this one. Mechanically, it plays fine, but when the level designs are not there to compensate, you don't have a good adventure on your hands. Interestingly enough though, there is actually a proper sequel to 3 on the Game Boy Advance called Hoodlum's Revenge. This goes for an isometric view instead of a side-scrolling one. Basically the same thing Spyro and Banjo also did on the console. And like Rayman 1 and 2 on the Game Boy Color, this one ain't that bad either. It's very forgettable, but it exists. I understand that when it comes to this piece of hardware, it's really difficult to get a 3D platformer to work as intended, but man, I really can't get behind this camera angle. I tried for all of those games. Banjo was the only one to really get it right in my opinion. This plays very similar to the Spyro games, and I didn't like those either, but I mean, I guess it works. It may not just be for me. Nah, it just doesn't work. I'm gonna say that instead. It certainly has a lot more in line with the console Rayman 3 than the handheld Rayman 3, but realistically, the most interesting part about Rayman 3 on the GBA was it was used as the base for the GBA version of Rayman Raving Rabbids. Okay, so yes, around this time in Rayman's life is when the character was being used as a literal doormat for the oncoming Rabbid pandemic. If you're a fan of those minigame collections, more power to you. We did, years later, at least get a couple of good Rabbids games out of this weird monstrosity with Rabbids Go Home and Mario Plus Rabbids, but man, I just can't get over the fact that Rayman was simply thrown in here for name recognition while simultaneously having his name ruined in the process. Some of you may recall the cancelled early version of Rayman 4, where we were gonna have a proper platformer with the Rabbids as enemies, and it sounded so much cooler. Here you go, I guess. The console version may have been totally switched around to a minigame collection, but here on the GBA, that premise is still here. I mean, don't misunderstand me, this is still not a good game, but it's interesting that this exists. The core vision of what Rayman Raving Rabbids was going to be, some of that could be found here. Probably not as intended to be as broken of a mess as what we actually got, but the story's interesting at least. In that canceled trailer, there are these moments where Rayman will have different costumes on, and that part is in this version, and all they do is lock really basic abilities behind them, and you have to toggle to the one transformation every single time, and the abilities don't make sense, because yeah, of course, the chewed gum spitting ability that you have to spit into the tree that are hollowed out so you can make them bouncy. Oh, only the punk version of Rayman could do that. You know, that's the main staple of the punk lifestyle, right? This even carries over to the DS version of Rayman Raving Rabbids as well. Same story, man. That canceled premise of the evil Rabbids and your Rayman in a platformer. This game does it too, except now it's a 2D platformer built off of the Rayman 2 engine? It plays exactly like Rayman 2. Even restricted to 2 dimensions, it's still pretty fun because Rayman was fun to control in that original game. There are some annoying touchscreen minigames shoehorned in here because, I mean, it's the Rabbids, of course we do. But the core game, I will be damned, is actually solid, and if I want to call any of these Rayman games a hidden gem, it's actually this one. The same costume mechanic is here as well, and same thing, abilities are locked behind them, and I have no idea why, but they are utilized a lot better than in that GBA version, so as crazy as it is to see Grandma Rayman, who's the only one that could summon boulders, yeah, I'll take it, I guess. It's better than literally nothing. My grandma's better than yours. I don't make the rules. E3 2010, the same time Nintendo had that really crazy conference where they brought a bunch of franchises back like Kirby and Donkey Kong and GoldenEye. Well, hey, Ubisoft managed to pull off one of the greatest reveals they've ever done that same week. Rayman is back, baby. We may have killed him by a bunch of Rabbids, you know, sorry about that, but hey, we're rebooting this beloved franchise. We're giving it this amazing art style with our fancy new UbiArt engine, Rayman Origins. Oh my god, this game is so good. Origins goes back to Rayman 1 in terms of the general aesthetics and modernizes the gameplay to a beautiful degree. This is one of the most free-flowing 2D platformers ever made. I don't know if there's a platformer out there with more fluid play control than this one. You can essentially just run the entire time, and the level design is so immaculately perfected, it is more fun to keep a run and learn how to time your jumps and die while doing so you can really memorize what you're running through than it is to take a moment and assess your surroundings. This ain't the time to be standing around. You got places to go and seductive fairies to save. Hell yeah, dude, love it. Now, granted, there may be a bit of a bias here. This, Donkey Kong Country Returns, and Kirby's Epic Yarn all released basically back to back, and all of these games are fantastic, so I was in platformer heaven at the time. But even still, Origins is top tier. Just not the 3DS version. I mean, Jesus, it's like you're watching a 1080p YouTube video in 240p. I'm gonna vomit. Play it on literally anything else. The Vita is a fantastic platform for this game. The 3DS version, oh my god, this is gross. And the sequel, Legends, is no slouch either. The most obvious difference is, while Origins went for a more flat color style with its art direction, Legends goes for a smoother, more painted approach. Both look fantastic. I do kind of prefer Origins, but to say either of these games look bad would be a really dumb thing to say. Aside from that though, in essence, it is kind of just more of the same with more fleshed out levels, as well as this brand new mechanic where Murphy will come in to assist you on your travels. Oh man, okay, so see, this is where things get weird again. So initially, Legends was gonna be a Wii U exclusive, and Murphy would be playable with the gamepad's touchscreen, while the other real-life players, or if playing solo, a computer, will run through, or I should say walk through, the level that you're helping clear out. When Ubisoft delayed the game to work on porting it to other consoles because Nintendo fans during the Wii U era didn't deserve nice things, they had to, of course, change how this entire mechanic worked. The Wii U version still works as intended, but now in the other versions, Murphy just automatically moves to where he's needed and you press a button to take advantage of his abilities. That's it, and then you go about your day. As a result, many do say the Wii U version is the superior of them all, but I don't know, I'll be honest, I don't agree. I was never one to enjoy platformers with co-op, so the fact that the Wii U version takes control away from the player as a core mechanic for most of the levels, yeah, I don't like that. This is where the newest version on the Switch, the definitive version, shines in my opinion. This one maintains the button-based Murphy controls while also including the Murphy's Touch set of levels in the main menu, where you get to use the touchscreen to control Murphy as Ubisoft God intended. Any minor nitpicks aside, both Rayman Origins and Legends are amazing platformers and modernize this character and his world perfectly. When it comes to modern 2D platformers, quite frankly, you can't really get that much better than these. I mean, Tropical Freeze exists, but you get what I'm saying. Legends even includes a huge chunk of levels from Origins, though I do think Origins is still the stronger game in general. I don't know, in my opinion, something about Legends coming off as a simple level pack with this sort of painting structure for the main menu, it always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Origins came off as a more proper adventure, and I think the game is a little bit better as a result. But I'm really nitpicking here, man. That doesn't really matter. Legends also has these music rhythm-based pseudo autorunner levels, which are really cool. But once though, Origins had a similar concept with these treasure chasing segments, and those are really fun, but man, maybe it's just me here. When you make a level strictly tied to the beat of the music, it's not too hard to figure out, and then you lose replay value as a result. The chasing segments were a lot cooler, cause you could always mess up at any given moment. Man, where will the nitpicking end? But whatever, at the end of the day, this is really just a spark of debate in the comments. It doesn't matter. Both games are amazing, and with their successes, surely the future of this franchise is very bright, and our heroes are gonna ride off really well into the sunset. No. In the year 2022, the gap in time between Rayman Legends' original release and today is greater than that of Rayman 3's original release and Rayman Origins. This is what pain feels like. Oh, but they've certainly been trying, alright. Rayman does still have technically a prominent position, but on mobile devices. To be fair, considering a huge level of enjoyment from Origins and Legends comes from its sort of speedrun, autorun styled nature, creating these single-button mobile games that are genuine autorunners, it actually makes all the sense in the world. It's like one of the smartest things Ubisoft's ever done. Rayman Jungle Run and Rayman Fiesta Run are fantastic games. Doesn't matter that they're on mobile, they're actually really fun. As for the sequels, Rayman Adventures and Rayman Mini, it's just, why is mobile the primary home for Rayman now? Rayman Adventures is like a weird part 2 to Fiesta Run. It looks very much the same, has a lot of the same ideas and mechanics, but Rayman Mini? This one is actually really new. It released in 2019, exclusive to the Apple Arcade service, and it's a proper sequel to the franchise. We have levels based around you being tiny. This is not something these games have done before. This is what I meant about Rayman having multiple rises and falls, man. Twice now, Rayman was put in the limelight and made out to be a big deal, and we got fantastic platformers out of it, and then before you know it, Ubisoft pulls the rug from under his feet, and the fans are left clueless. By all accounts, Rayman has always technically been here. He never really went away, but has he really been here though? The original Rayman, the fan remake Redemption, The Great Escape, Hoodlum Havoc, Origins, and Legends, you would be hard-pressed to find platformers with as consistent of a high quality and fantastic style as these. But I feel like all of the effort put into those main games is almost pointless in the grand scheme of things if the people responsible for the franchise consistently do things that people never ask for. But considering Beyond Good and Evil 2's insane development cycle, that game will probably never release, and the fact that Just Dance kept releasing on the Wii after dropping the Wii U and also simultaneously released on the Switch, I have learned to not question Ubisoft anymore. This is a weird company that is holding this franchise hostage. As a company, Ubisoft clearly has a lot of issues they need to resolve. I am not going to pretend as if Rayman's negligence is the biggest thing they have to deal with. But that being said, being a fan of this franchise, I still can't help but be pretty annoyed. I know I tried to do the same thing for Ape Escape a while ago and we all saw how that went. Maybe Rayman will have a slightly different future. It shouldn't be too difficult, you know, just do a full-on remake of Rayman 2. You bring back the Rayman taking a piss ad campaign, and we're golden. You get it? It's a pee joke. Pac-Man platformers. This is what many of you came to see, right? It's so interesting to think about just how far they took this different take on the franchise back in the day. I mean, we had Packed Land, that was a side-scroller with strange controls and you kept running into a fairy for some reason. this was really the best thing to make a stage out of in Smash? Really? You got all these other adventures to pull these great ideas out of, but this is the game you go with. Oh, okay, sure. But no, if anything, that's just a game that was coinciding with the original cartoon, and any of the weirdness with this one is sort of self-contained. There was also the other side-scroller, Pac in Time, and that's a whole other weird mess of annoying mechanics like a bad rope swinging system and a really cumbersome item inventory management system. It's kinda neat that they were willing to revive this one for the newer museum, but who really cares? This is all based off of a weird Amiga game called Fury of the Furries anyway. I can assure you, we are not missing much with this one's legacy. At this time in Pac's history, there was really no basis to make a 3D platformer that can hang with the rest during the PS1 generation. So, PacMan World is really just Namco trying out a bunch of different ideas with their star franchise to see what'll stick. And stick it did, surely all thanks to Mr. T and Mini-Me hyping it up in the commercial. Guaranteed success, I miss the 90s. And with this new initiative, man, we got a whole ass trilogy with a couple of spin-offs, some weird handheld ports many years later, they're not good, but we'll get to that. And recently, a remake? Yo, props to World for being the beefiest side series in this franchise to date. And you know, honestly, the first Pac-Man World, subtitled 20th Anniversary, is a pretty fun time. The whole idea is it's his 20th birthday party, and it's ambushed by the ghosts, and his family is kidnapped. Something pretty cool about all this is actually acting as if he's 20 years old here. He has a wife, kids, a house, and a mortgage by age 20? Okay, Namco, that is a pretty unrealistic game right here. Once the novelty of this being a Pac-Man game starts to wear off, it's realistically just a pretty fine platformer. It doesn't really do anything wrong, but it doesn't necessarily excel at anything either. It's a functional adventure that expands on the character's mobility with new movement options like a butt bounce and a rev roll. It's just a spin dash. I don't care if you call it something else, it's a spin dash. We got the addition of some personality to the ghost characters. It introduces some nightmare fuel to the franchise with Pac-Man. Really scared me as a kid. Gotta admire the smile he holds throughout most of this adventure after that though. That's a level of happiness that we should all strive for. What's that? My family is gone and I gotta travel on a boat to go save them? That's fine, nothing's gonna kill my happiness, damn it. Also, during the opening segment where all of Pac's family is getting kidnapped, do you ever take the time to freeze frame on the cat? You're welcome, what the hell is this? Given that there is once again not much identity that can be pulled from the arcade games, a lot of World could feel kind of generic at times. We got some pretty standard level themes with tried and true platformer obstacles and mechanics, collectible letters scattered throughout the stages, a soundtrack that mostly hovers around the okay territory. It's really the fruit that you can find and the pop-up ghosts and mazes that remind you, oh yeah, this is a Pac-Man game. Like you have these full-on mazes as these extra side areas with all these unique layouts as basically a collectible throughout the adventure. You go and get a Galaxian piece, bring it back to a door, and hey, it's a maze. That's what Pac-Man does best. It's kinda cool. But nothing else really stands out aside from it being just a pretty well-designed game. It's a charming and inoffensive enough romp from start to finish without really any downtime, and because it was on the PS1, this golden age for 3D platformers, a lot of nostalgia was to follow. That's just by the pure nature of being on the PS1 of this era. I'm nostalgic for Jersey Devil 2 because it was there. Nowadays though, it's easier to recognize that the bigger things that are bogging this game down are really just a lot of small issues that could really only be fixed if something like a remake were to PacMan World Repack. I cannot believe this is real. Listen, the absolute jank of the PS1 game certainly has its charm. I am a big fan of it, but to have a somewhat cult classic of a platformer get a full-blown remake? I honestly thought I would never see the day. Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Medieval, Resident Evil 2, this PS1 remake trend I am all in favor of. Let's do Pepsi Man next. Clearly Ape Escape is never gonna happen, so why not? Essentially, Namco went back and took their average platformer and easily, without a doubt, made a definitive version of it. There's no like, oh, I don't know, the physics of the PS1 Crash Bandicoot games can kind of feel better in this. No. This is easily the better version of the game. I would love to hear the arguments that say otherwise. There are just so many small changes that really make this a better experience overall. The power pellets turn you giant now, that's really cute. The controls are razor sharp. Some of the music is remastered, I think? It's weird. Some of the songs are these really clear remixes, while some of them sound like straight rips of the PS1 game. I don't know, the soundtrack is still kind of just alright. It's just weird how this version was handled. But the bosses though, oh man, the bosses. This was one of the worst parts of the original game. Dude, the Anubis fight was so bad. Spinning on these platforms and trying to not accidentally jump off when you're being bombarded by obstacles in 3 different directions, it was the worst. It was the worst fight in like any platformer ever. And yes, it is now fixed in Repack. Like I said, an objectively better game. The vast majority of the platforming stages remain unchanged and therefore maintain that same level of quality of just being a really solid platforming time. But all of these bosses have been improved to some capacity. Like in the original, there was this race against clowns in the carnival stage, and it was fine. The top-down thing was really weird and the controls are very loose. It's a cute novelty, but whatever. Here though, it's in first person now, and the controls are great. I love the bosses in this version. They were once the worst part of the game, and now they were something I was looking forward to. And there's also the addition of these brand new cutscenes before the boss fights that show Pac-Man's influence on them, whereas before, you saw nothing of him until the end of the game. This is way better. It reminds me of Yoshi's Island when the Magic Koopa would come in and like over the bosses. That was great. I love that. That's an awesome thing. And then when it comes to the artistic style, I think this looks way better too. Like the nightmare fuel that we had with the original Pac-Man, that got put in the scrapyard where it belonged. Except the newer and better Pac-Man. This is so good. I even have to give props to the UI. The game doubles down on Pac's arcadey roots by keeping the score and all of the Pac letters on screen at all times. Everything else about this game has been maintained and polished to a degree, as it was expected to be, but the way the score is always on screen now and numbers are popping up whenever you get pellets and whatnot, it actually adds a bit of an arcadey vibe to this game that was missing before, and helps make this feel like a proper Pac-Man game. I never thought I would actually praise a game for keeping a high score system in 2022, but damn it, they did it. It makes sense here. All that being said, some issues still hold this game back from true greatness. We still have an adventure where nothing really comes off as totally original. And since everything is faithfully recreated, this means that basically every level requires a little bit of backtracking, since you often gotta use this fruit that you just got for a locked door that's a few screens back. That is a very common trope with this game, but even still, it's fine. Namco took their classic average platformer, and now it's an above average platformer. The child in me who grew up with the original is pleased. Even if they removed the scream at the start, that does take away a few points, I'm not gonna lie. And hey, this whole PacMan World idea is just cool for giving a little bit of extra lore to Pac-Man himself for having a full-on family now. And hey, Miss Pac-Man was a big deal of a character too, right? You know, no one really cares about the kids, but Miss Pac-Man, oh, she's someone special. Well, I know that nowadays Namco doesn't want you to know about this, but we got a bit of a secret game that came out next after the original PS1 game. In between the releases of PacMan Worlds 1 and 2, we got Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness. Do you remember how in the original world we had all those maze sections hidden behind doors? Well, let's make an entire game around that. On a quest to save Professor Pac from the mirror that he's been sucked into, you go across the 4 wonders of Pac-Land to gather special gems and take down, an evil witch? And her giant evil green Pac-Man. Alright. Like World before it, it is a super straightforward game. It is just very mechanically sound. You got levels of unique maze layouts strung together by a little bit of puzzle solving and a little bit of enemy dodging, with some new elements thrown in from time to time, like top-down racing. They were really on that car racing idea back then, weren't they? This is really one of those games that kinda shows its entire hand early. While we do see some slightly new mechanics and puzzle opportunities as we progress, and the theming does definitely get a bit more original than Pac-Man had, like we have Egypt, and then China with these enemy Chinese dragons, that's super cool. This is still a what you see is what you get kind of deal. Saved by it still being a relatively unique idea, this is certainly one of the furthest ways the core maze gameplay has ever gone in terms of making an entire adventure out of it. And also, the soundtrack. The soundtrack to this game is incredible and very important to the game's overall enjoyment. Go and listen to Cleopatra, that song is amazing. As far as a potential remake goes, I kinda think this is one of those games that's gonna be stuck in the past. I don't know, man, Pac-Mom's Maze Madness just doesn't really roll off the tongue as much. Even if she has a super cool hat, I'm sorry, I'm calling it like I see it. I deeply apologize to all of you Pac-Mom fans out there. I hope both of you can forgive me really soon. And then we got Pac-Man World 2. Now this Oh, this is where it's at. Let's just embrace this right out of the gate. The originality is, once again, not really this game's strong suit. We have a grassland, an ice land, a lava land, whatever. The game controls like a dream, and that is much more important. While the original had this sort of side-scrolling 3D thing going on, World 2 goes for full-on 3D and polishes up all of the mechanics to boot. Rolling around is a lot more fun, some of the pack chain segments are a lot more visually interesting, and the bouncing, man, the bouncing in this game is so much more satisfying. And the developers knew this too, it's obvious. Stages like Bedoing Woods, where you're bouncing up a ton of super tall trees, it is great platforming stuff. And then the bosses, while they also sacrifice originality, just using the ghosts with these robot suits this time around, I mean, hey, it kinda stinks, but it adds some more Pac-Man flavor to this adventure, and that's fine by me. Even the main baddie, Spooky the Ghost, he's just an advanced ghost. It works perfectly. This game is just a constant burst of platforming goodness from start to the water world, where you do multiple obnoxious auto-scrolling water levels back to back to back. Dear God, why did they save all of these for just one world? This part sucks. Namco should go to jail. And did you like look back at the opening cutscene and see the pack dog? Dude, like, it was an actual dog before. What happened? This is a tiny person walking on all fours. I do not like it. No sir, I do not. And Miss Pac-Man's nowhere to be seen in this adventure. I'm not really sure why that's the case. Maybe they were having a marriage dispute. I don't know. Maybe they could figure that out in the remake. Who's to say? As platformers started to get more complicated during this generation, bleeding together these different genres in an attempt to age up with the older audience, it's nice to have a relatively standard but very polished platformer thrown into the mix. And if World 2 does eventually get a repack of its own by the time you're watching this, then hey, there are definitely some perks to this good timeline. PacMan World 3, on the other hand, Grand Theft Auto 3, Jack 2, Ratchet Deadlocked. If you want to be successful now, Pac-Man, you gotta get edgier. That's the only option. Oh man, oh baby, listen to that dope title screen music. Hope that sound of wind pumps you up for a great adventure. Oh god, they talk now? God, Pac-Man having like a weird, normal human voice is so damn cursed, but honestly, it's not that bad. Like, I would clearly rather he doesn't talk at all, but maybe this well-done animation is fooling me here. I actually really like the voices in this game. But then you get into the game itself and God, World 3 is so weird. Pac-Man's in a post-apocalyptic world now. Why is everything so dark and murky? The soundtrack is all mellow and ambient instead of upbeat and catchy. It's just weird. Oh god, Irwin? This is the villain? We jumped from a Robo Pac-Man to a big spooky ghost to a destroy all humans alien looking reject. Man, those forehead wrinkles. Should have invested in some lotion. That's probably why he's so mad. Along the way, Orson is helping you out too. In an interesting bit of continuity, that is the ghost who was controlling Pac-Man in the original Pac-Man world, and now he's deciding to like be good. It's a weird piece of continuity that I appreciate. It's strange. Everything about this game is strange. But it's not like the game is bad. Honestly, this continues the trend of the game playing fine with some solid platforming mechanics, but it's really hard to take this so seriously when the game is taking itself so seriously. This is Pac-Man. Why am I traveling through hell like it's Doom? If you want some of that patented wackiness that you would come to expect for a platformer, well, the game does have these maze sections, but man, we got this really repetitive, kooky, over-the-top music and these techie visuals because you're jumping into arcade machines and that's how it's done this time around. They don't really spice things up the way that they thought they might. The maze sections in the previous games were optional, in here, they're mandatory, and by doing that, on top of the weirdness, it's not a good fit. You got sections where you get to play as some of the ghosts. Pac-Man gets to be sassy with his new demon-looking wannabe threat. He's scary looking too. There are multiple ways to take down enemies now because you have your fist combos as well as these power-ups that pop up over time. I'll give him credit, there was some genuine effort put into this, but it is ultimately just too much of a monotonous and soulless adventure to really sit through the entire thing in one piece, unless you're a dedicated Pac nut like I am. Which is a shame, because this attempt to actually give Pac a voice and a personality, I do think that part worked out really well. Certainly better than... But hey, if Pac-Man waka-wakaing through the underworld sounds exciting to you, then give it a shot. You never know, you might like it. You know, this is around the same time that like Ty the Tasmanian Tiger made a jump in the third game to a really dark world. Maybe this was like just a literal dark time for platformers in the mid-2000s. It made sense. It's just weird to look back at. And then they tried to revive the series on the Game Boy Advance, and Jesus Christ, why? You see, alongside their console releases, we got World 3 and World Rally on PSP, and World 3 even showed up on DS, and they are worse than the console versions, that's to be expected, but they're functional enough given what those systems were capable of. The fact that we have World 3 on DS and it actually kinda works is a technical marvel, but there's no reason to actually play it. It's the worst version of an already below average game. But now, why in the mid-2000s we got World 1, Maze Madness, and World 2 for Game Boy Advance? This is one of the most confusing sets of releases I've ever seen. The games weren't new enough to be the next best thing to purchase, nor old enough to have a growing sense of nostalgia yet. Was anybody asking for these? The DS was about to be the hot holiday item for those few years. Pac and Miss Pac were sent out to die. So, okay, the first two, World 1 and Maze Madness, are definitely iterations of the console games. Very clearly, we have level designs being pulled onto the smaller screen. And mechanically, they're pretty sound, I guess. The music has been ported in an incredibly crusty way. Oh god, maybe it sounds better on official speakers, but this is gross. And outside of some elements that are removed, like most of the boss fights, they did kind of accomplish what they set out to do. They look absolutely cursed, and when blown up on a big screen like this, yeah, they look terrible. Nothing about this seems to make these versions of these games appealing outside of the sheer novelty of it. Like at the time, I remember thinking, oh, Maze Madness on Game Boy Advance, that's sweet. And then I got into level 1, and Cleopatra is not the song that plays there, it's not in the game at all. So, okay, they removed all the good music from the game that I wanted to play. Easy 0 out of 10 score as a result, sorry. When it came to World 2, which released a while later, you can tell that they at least tried to take some creative liberties with the original adventure. Like, I think the new sprites are really nice, so I'm glad there's some effort there instead of just shrinking down the images of the original PS1 sprites in MS Paint. The music has, once again, been butchered though. Like, these games on consoles had great soundtracks, but then they ported the more mediocre stuff exclusively and placed them in the levels that they didn't initially belong to. I don't get it. I mean, I guess considering it's not like the GBA had much in terms of 3D platformers, I guess this is one of the ones to check out if you're an insane person. All things considered, yeah, these ports are really dumb. And in my opinion, no rise and fall story of that era is as interesting and tragic as that of Epic Mickey. I have made it no secret that I absolutely love 3D platformers, and hey, the same console that has Super Mario Galaxy on it, one of my favorite games of all time, also has a kinda dark and mysterious Mickey Mouse platformer. It really undervalues what the company was initially going for, but that's all it took to get me really interested. Also, all three of these games have been on my backlog for years, so I just wanted an excuse to knock them off. Oh man, it's crazy. They took that one character from Kingdom Hearts and gave him his own game series. You know, good for him. The entire concept of Epic Mickey is kinda more well known than the actual game itself, and honestly, that really shouldn't come as a surprise. Reverting Mickey back to a more classic design and tossing him into a darker and grittier world with Wasteland, filled with dozens of characters that haven't seen the light of day in forever, and putting a spotlight on vaulted characters like the Phantom Blot, the Mad Doctor, and especially Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, who was created before Mickey Mouse, which is just really cool. Bringing in Warren Spector of Deus Ex fame with an entirely new studio, Junction Point, which was a wild jump to bring him in to do a Disney game, and making a platformer of it all. The mouse is no stranger to fantastical adventures with a whole lot of jumping. You know, you got the Magical Quest trilogy on Super Nintendo, the Illusion games on Sega, Mickey Mousecapade. Okay, maybe not that one. It's also not the first time we're going retro either. Remember Timeless River from Kingdom Hearts 2? I remember thinking that I wanted to see a whole lot more of this stuff, and hey, this kinda does that. And oh boy, you've all seen the concept art, right? Clearly this was not meant for the public eyes to see, since the final product is nowhere near as menacing, but it is hard to deny just how much hype was behind a project like this. Look at this crazy art. This is a Mickey Mouse game? This is gonna be incredible. Have you seen the concept for Evil Mickey? Oh Jesus, that's horrifying. And hey, it did get a spotlight during Nintendo's E3 2010 press conference, one of the company's strongest showings at that expo. You know, the same year Skyward Sword had all of those stage tech issues. What could possibly go wrong here? When you start talking about Epic Mickey in terms of what could have been, you already are going to be falling way under expectation, and realistically that's just not fair. No matter what was the initial pitch or the concept art, no matter what that was gonna be, I have still seen so many people wax nostalgia over the final product, and that's important. Not so much for these two games, no one really talks about those, and there's probably reasons why. The tale of Epic Mickey begins with Mickey stumbling across Yen Sid using a magic paintbrush to create a world for forgotten characters. And once the sorcerer steps away for a little bit, Mickey decides to goof around with the paintbrush, haha, and accidentally messes everything up. Oh, he spills paint and thinner all over the place, it's a disaster. And rather than own up to it, he escapes before Yen Sid can see what happened. Years pass by, you can see Mickey celebrating in his bedroom with the trophy all by himself at one point, much respect. And then the result of all of that mischief, the Phantom Blot, comes out into the real world, captures Mickey, and brings him into the painted world he helped destroy. You see, to the people of Wasteland, Mickey messing things up causes a catastrophe called the Thinner Disaster, filling the world with evil blotlings and just overall despair. They don't know Mickey was the root of all the chaos, but it's not gonna stop you from going to fix it. Or maybe continuing to be a jerk. That's a thing. Yeah, it's kind of weird. There's like this whole morality system in the game, even though it has no bearing on the overarching plot until the very end. It's really odd, but we'll get to it. The Mad Doctor is here, and he is now super power hungry with the Phantom Blot running around causing issues. And Oswald is the ruler of the nearly post-apocalyptic looking area of Wasteland. Also, we got robotic buddies of Mickey's friends here. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Like, you randomly stumble upon Goofy's decapitated robotic head at some point, and I don't know, that's a little twisted, can we be honest here? But hey, we do get to explore a pretty interesting world of Disney as a result, so I'm a-okay with this creepiness. Without a doubt, the world is easily where Epic Mickey shines the brightest. It's not just an art style choice here, modernizing a classic look for Mickey barely scratches the surface. The entire world is filled with Disney nostalgia. You jump into projector screens showing off old cartoon title cards, leading to side-scrolling segments based on said cartoons. Many cutscenes play out like animated storyboards, those are really cool. You interact with characters that have been stuck in the Disney vault for generations. There are plenty of classic Disney park rides you get to run around in as well, that's really cool. Mickey Junk Mountain is littered with old merchandise like lunchboxes, pins, and even video games. Oh god, not again. This approach to the design of the world shows up across all three games, so while we will touch on the latter two games later, just know that no matter what I say going forward, the world and universe of Epic Mickey is just fantastic. Except in the oft-forgotten adventure of Epic Mickey Pathfinder. You know, everyone's favorite point-and-click adventure game that was exclusive to web browsers? What do you mean you don't remember this one? And especially in the modern world where you have something like Cuphead as a massive success, this modern take on an old cartoon style, oh, there is definitely potential for more stuff like this nowadays. I mean, hell, when I put it like that, it kind of sounds like Epic Mickey was a bit ahead of its time, which I would agree with. But when we start talking about how the first game plays, Alright, so in essence, Epic Mickey plays out like a fairly typical genre-bending 3D platformer. Definitely feels very PS2 era, and that is not a bad thing. You run, you jump, you got a spin attack. This ain't my first platformer rodeo here, this thing hits all of the basic notes. The big unique mechanic is being able to shoot out paint and thinner from a special paintbrush. Paint fills in parts of the land, thinner takes it away. Thinner can slowly deteriorate enemies while painting them will slowly convert them to fight on your side. It is a really cool idea, but in practice, it is pretty limited. You are explicitly shown at all times what you can interact with, so when it comes to the light puzzle solving and platforming that you do perform, it works fine, but it does end up feeling pretty underutilized. Especially when sometimes there are items just hidden under floors that you wouldn't know otherwise, so just spray thinner all over the place and hope for the best. It's pretty half-baked. But its biggest use case isn't even necessarily for the platforming or the combat, it's for working towards the wide range of side quests, because yes, there are a lot of them, and there's a morality system attached to it. Finally, Mickey Mouse can be your angel and your devil, what I've always wanted to see, It's almost like Ow the Edge Mickey Mouse edition. It's all pretty minor stuff, there's just a lot of it. You can either prove a thief is guilty by painting his trail for evidence, or you can just pay him off and let him get away and get an item in return. You'll often run into these pumps that can take either paint or thinner, and whenever you fill it with, something different will happen. You can fill this one with paint to get the teacup ride to operate more smoothly, or with thinner to mess it up, get it to break, and you get the chest in the middle. My favorite one though is where this guy Damien Salt wants to win the affection of Henrietta right across the way, but he's too nervous, so he asks of you to figure out what she likes and for you to go and get it for him. She says she loves flowers, but also hates ice cream. So many guys try to give her ice cream, and that's really bad because she's lactose intolerant. Okay, so that's an allergy. You really don't want to mess with that. That could have serious repercussions. We're going to a dark place with this, aren't we? Yeah, bro, she totally loves ice cream. I got you. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna give you some sweet ice cream you can give her. No worries. Having a morality system in your game is definitely an ambitious choice, but really when it comes down to it, the choices you make really don't affect things like at all. So for example, when the time comes for an upgrade, you get extra space for either the paint or the thinner depending on which one you used most up until that point. And that's kinda about it, as far as I can tell. Some characters may speak down towards you a little bit more, but yeah, who cares? Splat them with thinner and let them melt into the ground. I'm committed to the evil Mickey route here. Oswald will remember this. That being said, there are story elements that are more important than others when it comes to this morality system. Like you can take down the big bosses with either mainly using paint or thinner, and things do change as a result, which is actually pretty cool, but you really don't get to see the fruit of your labor until the very end of the game when you go through a sort of where are they now series of clips. The standard linear adventure is fine enough as it is. The morality system really adds nothing to it. Some items are good and evil specific, so I guess that can encourage a second playthrough, and the painting and thinning, I get it, you know, this is a Wii exclusive, there's inherently going to be some limitations here, but realistically, for what's here, that part works fine. Whether or not you're a hero or just a big old jerk, it leads to a few laughs, but not much more. And also, on that topic, a whole lot of the game just feels like fetch quests and not actual platforming. When you get thrown into a new area and you explore it at your own pace, finding some secrets, that part's decent, I like that stuff. But you talk to any character, I swear, almost any of them, chances are they're gonna ask you to get a thing from a different part of the world and bring it back to them, asking you to do a whole lot of backtracking. And it happens a lot. A whole lot. Like late in the game, there's this one painting puzzle where you gotta keep going up and down floors to properly rotate portions of really, really tall paintings. And truthfully, it's pretty tedious, but it's at least building upon the game's core mechanics. I know the characters are a big selling point of the whole Disney World in general, but here, it just feels like busy work. There are some typical platformer woes here too, but hey, I'm a sucker for the genre. I can look past those parts. To an extent. Like, the camera isn't great. Surprise, surprise. However, they did program it so Mickey's ears are visible at any angle, constantly showing the Mickey emblem. So, yeah, it works for me. Pretty fantastic stuff. To me, Epic Mickey suffers from too much ambition. You go back and listen to what Warren Spector was saying about this project, and he very clearly wanted this to be really, really big. But due to specific reasons that we will probably never know the actual answers to, what we ended up getting is a game that tries to be the jack of all trades and is the master of none. Aside from the art style. Yes, that part is really good. Epic Mickey is a fine platformer. Great style, cool use of Mickey as a character, relatively decent mechanics, but not much more than just fine. Maybe the sequels are going to be the ones to fix everything. Who am I kidding? You already know that's not the truth. A few years after the first game's release, the world of Epic Mickey was about to expand. Full-blown sequel, releasing on all consoles now, not just the Wii. Bam! Side game on 3DS, inspired by the classic Sega Mickey games. Bam! Disney can now monetize Oswald merch. Good for them, they really needed the money. Oh, no, okay, so that's it. Just 2 games and a bunch of merchandise. Alright, cool, let's check out the games. Gotta start off with the sequel first here. We have Epic Mickey 2, The Power of Two. Let's go. Oh, there's voice acting now. Alright, that's pretty cool. The budget has increased since the last game. It's a bit of a whiplash after the lack of it in the first game, and I kinda think it worked better in that way, but sure. The voice acting isn't bad, but considering how bright and bubbly all the characters sound, it kinda nullifies the dark and gritty tone the world was initially setting out to be. But okay, I guess I can live with it. What sucks though is the Mad Doctor is back. He claims to be good now, and it's very clear from a mile away that that's a big fat lie. And All he does is sing, and in case you were wondering, yes, it gets old really fast. So the premise of this sequel is fairly straightforward. More shenanigans are happening in Wasteland, this time it's a bunch of earthquakes. Go. For the most part, the game is actually kind of exactly the same, but the big difference is there's now co-op. Joining Mickey on his quest is Oswald, fully playable by a player 2 or computer AI. It adds a little bit of nuance to the platforming. Some puzzles can only be done with Oswald. I just don't like it though. Maybe playing the game with an actual person controlling Oswald would ease some of the issues, as the AI is not that smart, gonna be honest with you, but it just feels shoehorned in. Otherwise though, the rest of the game really isn't all that different at all. Some basic exploring, there's some side-scrolling 2D segments, this time lacking the classic cartoon vibe the first one had, so that's disappointing. Simple puzzle solving with paint and thinner, and this time electricity thanks to Oswald's special remote. There are still plenty of camera issues, even though apparently the devs promised it would be way better and they made like thousands of individual changes. I couldn't tell you a single one. It's just so boring. I mean, hey, I at least beat the first game and I had a good time doing it. Here, I got 2 hours in before I fell asleep. There's just nothing interesting going on. You're just going from point A to point B. I really don't want to bother with any of the side quests because I care about the world even less than I did last time, and considering it is painfully obvious that the Mad Doctor is evil again, I have zero drive to see what he's up to behind all of that singing. And according to nearly all of the responses I got on Twitter, I very clearly have nothing to look forward to, so I'm gonna call it quits on this one, hope that's okay. Listen, the first game wasn't perfect, but all they had to do was really dial into what worked in that game and amplify it, but instead they just kinda made another Epic Mickey game with co-op that's not fun, and once again, annoying singing. But hey, it's on multiple consoles now, so more opportunities for people to play it, right? I mean, hey, this is a Wii U launch title after all. I've been playing the original Wii version all this time. I can't imagine what it's gonna look like in HD. Oh my god, the frame rate. This is real? Oh man, how did they release this? I don't know if it's like this on PS3 and 360, but oh man, this is rough. Let me just fill up the entire room with thinner real quick. It's beautiful. And how can we forget, it also released on the Vita. Cool. So Epic Mickey 2 kinda sucks, that's a shame, but the side game that released on the same day, Power of Illusion on 3DS, this is what I'm excited about. Combining current Epic Mickey with the classic Castle of Illusion is honestly genius, and it's made by Dreamrift, not known for much, but they did do Monster Tale on the DS. Never thought I'd get to mention this game. It's like Pokemon mixed with a Metroidvania, I recommend it. So yeah, I'm pretty optimistic here. This time around, a mysterious castle randomly appears in Wasteland, literally the Castle of Illusion. I'm already a big fan. And Minnie is trapped inside of it. Kinda crazy that the two main games came and went and Minnie was in neither of them now that I think about it. So Oswald calls upon Mickey once again to get to the bottom of things. Of course. Ooh, and Maleficent is at the helm of this one, no Mad Doctor in sight. Pretty refreshing to see, honestly. The opportunity for him to sing in both the console and portable game at the same time and make this a rhythm game was very strong, and I am glad they didn't take it. I mean, I guess technically it's not Maleficent, it's Mizrabel. She has been in the other Illusion games, and I mean, that's what she calls herself in this one, but I guess she just decided this time to look like Maleficent now? Okay. First off, the game looks pretty good. The sprite work is super top notch. I love all the hand-drawn character art. The backgrounds are nice and really detailed. This is great stuff to look at. Look at this, Scrooge McDuck is here and he does the cane bouncing from the DuckTales game. Hell yeah, dude. Gameplay-wise, it does play a little slower than I was expecting, but I mean, that is how the original Illusion games were too. When you put these games up side by side, they are very, very similar. Like the butt stomp is back as one of your main forms of attack, and the sound effect is exactly the same. Small touch, but it goes a long way. It's no platforming marvel, but I'll be damned. I'm really enjoying this. The problem though is at the end of the day, the 3DS has plenty of 2D platformer competition. In the third-party platformer space, this is definitely up there, but you gotta remember here, this is Epic Mickey we're talking about, we gotta throw in some painting mechanics, and that's where the game fails a little bit. It kinda works the same as the console games. You can shoot paint and thinner from your paintbrush, this time both acting like just normal ammunition. And if there's an obstacle in your path, you click it on the touchscreen, the entire game stops, you slowly erase it with some thinner, and if you want to place an object down, once again you tap the spot on the touchscreen, the entire game comes to a stop, and then you gotta outline the item with some paint. Yeah, this I'm not really into. The game is already inherently slower paced. And even still, this whole painting and thinning mechanic, it is a total pace breaker. If none of this stuff was in the game, we would have a competent reimagining of the Castle of Illusion series. But instead, all of this painting and thinning stuff, it really stops this game from being anything better than kinda good. Just like the console games before it, the concept behind this game is fantastic, but it overshoots its shot and the final product suffers because of it. Just keep things simple, man. Us gamers would like it a whole lot more. What started off with huge expectations and fantastic concept art ended with one pretty good platformer with a lot of potential, a retro-inspired offshoot with mishandled mechanics, a sequel that, yeah, it just kind of sucks, and a bunch of new Oswald merchandise. Enjoy. Probably the best thing to come out of this. I mean, there are special Wii remotes and nunchucks you can find on the internet too that were released alongside the game, so cool, I guess? Not long after the release of Epic Mickey 2: The Power of Two, Disney closed down Junction Point Studios, and the future of Epic Mickey is currently unknown. I think a modern, revised port of the first game would be really cool. You can leave the second game in the garbage, but I think Epic Mickey HD would be really, really cool. You know, as long as we don't try to revive Mickey Mousecapades, I think things can only go up from here. Watching the public opinion on Sonic Colors over the last decade or so has been very interesting, to say the least. Now, don't worry, we're not going to go on any sort of history lesson here about Sonic 06 and Sonic's transition to 3D. None of that stuff. I know everyone's tired of it by now. You're good. But I do think it is important to highlight just why Sonic Colors became such an acclaimed game in the first place. Especially since I've seen conversation recently about how the game is overrated and flat out not good because it started this negative trend of lackluster stories and poor characterization in subsequent Sonic games. Will this video end up being a biased opinion from a Sonic fanboy? You know what? Yeah, it will actually. Sonic Colors was, and still is, one of my favorite modern Sonic games, and I don't care who knows it. Conversation is one thing, but thanks to this game getting an ultimate re-release on PC and consoles, a whole new slew of gamers will get to try this game out for the very first time and come to their own conclusions. I say as you're about to watch a Sonic fan ramble on for 10 plus minutes. One of the things that attracted me to Sonic Colors right off the bat was that it was actually a bit of a reactionary piece by Sega and Sonic Team after the years of criticism they had going their way after the previous adventures that all kinda flopped. Regardless of your opinion on games like Sonic Unleashed and 06 nowadays, in the late 2000s, the over-the-top gimmicks, the Monster of the Week final boss formula, consistently adding new friends to the Blue Guys arsenal, all the while constantly being told, oh yeah, don't worry guys, this is gonna be the game that'll save the franchise. Well, people were sick of it. You know what? Actually, Colors releasing right alongside Sonic 4 Episode 1 probably didn't help matters now that I'm thinking about it. All of that love Sonic Unleashed is getting now? Oh boy, where were you all 10 plus years ago? That was not where the conversation was. All of that made the announcement and the release of Sonic Colors all the more of a big deal. You press start on the title screen and then boom, you're in. None of that pesky story stuff getting in the way. Just go fast. Are you wondering what sort of crazy monster Eggman's gonna summon this time around? Well, keep wondering. The Doctor is the only threat here. Okay, not the same case for the DS version, but shh, you get my point. Oh, and what about that cast of characters, man? Well, we got Sonic and Tails. Yeah, that's it. Okay, I know, again, it's not the same for the DS version. Stop interrupting me, I have a point to make here. The more time has passed, the more these things can appear to be limited in scope. But if anything, I and many others saw this as more of a concentrated restraint to hold back on the things that people kept taking issues with. Especially since this was a Wii exclusive. That console is as powerful as two GameCubes duct taped together. It is a miracle we got anything even close to Unleashed daytime stages here. But yes, I know, I will acknowledge this is a 10-year-old opinion. A lot of things have changed since back then, but I just think it's important to think about the context of when this game was a big deal in the first place. That changes a lot. You gotta think about it like this. Sonic's never been quite the same since the colors felt so bright. It's definitely worth wondering if that limited scope still holds up nowadays when many of us have played Generations, often considered the best Sonic has ever played, to death, and probably have modded it to death as well to play some Colors content with that modern engine. Yeah, I want to go back to the source material, see what that's all about. And as for Sega continuing to do not so great things with the Hedgehog and the games that followed Colors, well, I mean, come on, that's on Sega. None of that is Sonic Colors' fault. Now, simply put, does the gameplay still hold up? I mean, yeah, of course it does. I mean, I think that part was pretty obvious. The combination of the boosting mechanic with rewarding your quick reflexes with some shiny trinkets, I think it makes for a very satisfying time. Sure, it is mostly 2D and people get upset when you call it a 3D Sonic game, whatever, that's just semantics. Honestly, quality is quality, that's all I'm interested in. It definitely also helps that the soundtrack, oh god, the soundtrack is so good, dude. This is one of the best soundtracks of all time. Aquarium Park, Planet Wisp, Tropical Resort, it's all so good. Oh man, the Sonic Colors portion of the Anniversary Orchestra, not gonna lie, the orchestrated Aquarium Park got me a little emotional. I can admit it. And while gimmicks in Sonic games historically lead to playstyles that are radically different than the stuff that most people sign up for, we have the Wisps in this one, and honestly, this is one of the best gimmicks Sonic teams ever come up with. Sonic is in space this time around, exploring an interstellar amusement park, and if we're also trying to bring Sonic back to his simplistic roots, well, he's not saving little woodland critters this time around, but instead, little floaty aliens, each of which give you a temporary power-up that gives you access to specific shortcuts and encourages exploration to gather all of the collectibles. Having extra playable characters isn't inherently a bad thing, but it is really nice having a gimmick that finally just adds to Sonic's core moveset, and also makes sense in the context of the world. You're in space, you're getting help from aliens, I am behind that 100%. Now, why Wisps got shoehorned into following games that weren't in space, like Team Sonic Racing and Sonic Lost World, were beyond me, but hey! I mean, it wouldn't be a Sonic video if the YouTuber wouldn't go ahead and bash another Sonic game that's irrelevant to the topic, but you know, I'm just rolling with the punches here. Shooting through the skies as a laser, flowing through a trail of mid-air rings, spin dashing across walls and ceilings, it is all great fun. Now, yeah, some of those things were part of Sonic's core moveset before Colors, but hey, again, semantics. I don't care. A lot of people like to complain about that stuff. I don't care. Let me like the things that I like, okay? And it's when you decide to go for 100%, when you want to go back through levels after having all of the Wisps unlocked and you attempt to find all the red rings, that is where the level design truly starts to show its stuff. There is actually a fair bit of exploration here if you are so inclined, and in my opinion, it's fun to do so. And also, this is the perfect time to start talking about what makes the ultimate version of this game stand out from the original. There is a brand new Wisp here, the Jade Wisp. Originally showing up in Team Sonic Racing, yeah, remember that game? Sega doesn't. These little guys turn you into a ghost that can warp around to special glowing spots right around you to access hard to reach areas, oftentimes places that were inaccessible in the original. There's not really much to these since most of the level designs were all built before this Wisp even existed, but it's still a neat little addition that really helps with the whole encouraging exploration thing. It's also like the only notable addition too. Sonic Colors Ultimate took the original version of the game and really just added a lot of small stuff here or there. You've probably seen these golden coins throughout the levels now. These are park tokens. These are an unlimited collectible. They respawn when you return to levels and whatnot, and these are used for the new customization options. And that part is pretty weak, honestly. You got gloves and shoes that have some new colors and patterns. You can change your aura and boost trail. I mean, it's kinda neat, but when it's just slight color swaps and not even something like changing Sonic's body color or even having some costumes, it just doesn't really feel worthwhile. I am loving the modern trend of costumes and aesthetic changes as unlockables in platformers nowadays. I just wish this went further. I mean, Monkey Ball Banana Mania is doing it. Why is Sonic the one getting the short end of the stick here? I would have figured he would have gotten a better treatment. Well, at least you can also buy new Sonic and Sega themed avatars for the online leaderboards. Oh my god, Sega remembered Clockwork Knight? Dude, I don't even remember Clockwork Knight, that's crazy! But the most obvious change of them all is the redone lighting engine, and yeah, I'm gonna echo a lot of other opinions on this one. I am not really a fan of how this all looks. The darks have been made a whole lot darker, the lights have been made obnoxiously brighter in some instances, and I don't know, man, Sonic's model just looks kinda weird. He has a very weird shine to him, I don't like it. And it doesn't help that the cutscenes were simply upscaled, not redone, so they're a constant reminder of how Sonic used to look in contrast to his in-game lighting. It's really, really weird. Some of the textures have also been improved, but you really only notice that when doing a direct comparison in my opinion. Ultimate doesn't look terrible, but well, this is where Dolphin comes in. The upgrade showcase trailer for the game made a point to go, oh boy, look at how much better this looks compared to how garbage it used to look on the Wii. I have no idea where they're getting their footage from, man, but the Wii version didn't look that bad. It looked like this. Given the limitations of the system, we do have a low resolution we're working with here, but even then, colors always looked really good. Still does, honestly. But the reality of the situation here is the emulator, Dolphin, is a better expectation of how many of us wanted and or expected this remaster to look. Yes, obviously it's not real hardware, so we're technically cheating, but come on now. Since Colors is only now getting a re-release, Dolphin running at a higher resolution with a simple 60 FPS patch and even an HD texture pack if you're so inclined, is the best thing the fans have had for a long time to get the game looking on par with Unleashed and Generations. Ultimate didn't need to change the lighting in order to make it look modern. It already looked fine with a simple upscale, you just gotta touch up the textures and we would have been fine. Dolphin proved that. I also get it, this entire argument is subjective, but I haven't really seen that many people say this version looks better, so in my eyes, that kinda seems like a net loss, even though it technically doesn't really matter. But sadly, that is just the beginning of the issues. Now, granted, a lot of these could be just in the launch version and things could be made better over time with patches, but quite frankly, it is fairly annoying that a 10-plus-year-old game getting remastered is launching with these issues in the first place when they weren't there the first time around. The game is still functional and completable, so that much is good, but how some of these things slip through the cracks is really beyond me. The sound mixing is awful, some sounds being way louder than others, and you lack the ability to just lower the sound effects. In the options menu, you have to lower the music alongside it. Speaking of, sometimes the music just straight up doesn't play for some wisps or even some end-level jingles. It's very weird. Every zone now has 3 new remixes to complement the existing 3 arrangements already in every zone in the original version, so each of these 6 acts now has unique music, which is neat, but if you don't like them, like how I don't like them, and you want to work with the originals all the time, too bad. No option to pick and choose. Well, except for the Planet Wisp remixes, which for some reason are the only ones locked behind a paywall. Dude, seriously? Plenty of graphical glitches too, like here where the wisp capsule just decides to not explode. Or here, like the wisps that you save take forever to leave the planet you found them on as opposed to before, where they go on pretty quickly. Or here, where Sonic no longer jumps out of the level portals like he used to. There's a new mode with Metal Sonic Rival Rush, which is just a glorified time trial for only 6 levels, where in the first one, the tracker didn't even work. And even though Metal Sonic being here is pretty cool, there is zero context for him since there's no new story beats. He's just here now, cool. Hell, you should have made him playable at that point, like in the Sonic Adventure port. Would have just been a reskin of Sonic like it was in Sonic Adventure, but hey, still would have been cool. The models and Sonic Simulator's menus are incredibly broken. The infamously long credit sequence, and I swear, I am not making this part up, are now twice as long and go on for 30 minutes, and they didn't add any extra music, so half of the credits just play in silence. It's not even like I don't think Colors could have used some changes, you know? The 6-act structure just kinda haphazardly throws long acts and short acts back to back with no rhyme or reason. That could have been adjusted. The Supersonic Final Unlockable has always been fairly lame since you can't use wisps and its theme plays over the game's great soundtrack, something I never was a fan of, so that could have been tweaked as well. Don't get me wrong, Colors could have used some quality of life tweaks, and we got none of that, and the things that we did get are just objectively worse. Oh, but hey, at least there's now a perfect timing homing attack mechanic. That fixes everything, I guess. I know I'm kind of grasping at straws here, but if you're calling this the ultimate version of Sonic Colors, you also could have just thrown in the DS game for easy points. Like, why not? If we're calling it ultimate, may as well show that one. Why does Sega continue to act like Sonic's portable history never happened? Listen, I harbor no ill will to Blind Squirrel Games, the company responsible for this remaster. I can't believe that Sega would trust a relatively no-name company with a beloved Sonic game and not ensure the quality of the game is maintained. Why do we keep ending up in this position? Colors was a rare case where the community was more or less all behind it, so to see the re-release just getting bashed left, right, and center on social media, I gotta tell you, as a longtime fan of this game since day one, it's pretty depressing. We could have prevented this. But yes, of course, then there's also the Switch version of the game, and yeah, let's talk about it. Oh man, I cannot believe Nintendo fans are the ones getting the short end of the stick of a remaster of a previous Nintendo exclusive, but hey, okay, here we are. Now, for the most part, there are 2 talking points. The game runs at half the frame rate of the other versions, the same 30 FPS as the original Wii game, and the load times are disgustingly longer than that original version. How is that possible? I get it, you know, the Switch is a relatively weak console, but come on now. The fact that the original loaded really quickly, the PC and other console versions of this game run really quickly, how is this one the one that's almost on the level of Sonic 06? That does not make any sense to me. Aside from that though, that's really it. They're actually really similar, but boy, you take one look on social media and you can see that the lighting in this version was, incredibly bugged. And that's really putting it lightly. I don't even really feel comfortable showing any of the clips I've seen on Twitter because a lot of them require an epilepsy warning, basically, which... What scenario are we living in here that this got through the system? Now, thankfully, that is just with the launch version of the game. Those issues seem to have been patched out over time, but still, I cannot believe those things made it into the source game in the first place. Assuming that going forward there won't be any more lighting issues, I think I can honestly say that I think the social media outrage for this version was a bit overblown. There, I said it. Shocking, I know. On social media? Crazy. It's definitely not ideal. I do hate it when companies fail to properly utilize the Switch hardware and the narrative becomes, well, it's because the console is too weak. That's not true, just be better about it. And besides, like most other Sonic games at this point, PC is arguably the way to go anyway due to the inevitable mod support, but if you're a big Switch gamer like I am, especially if, once again, those lighting issues are totally gone, I actually think this is a fine enough version as well. I am still a big fan of the handheld functionality of the Switch, so getting to play the console Sonic Colors portably, that is really, really cool. What this all boils down to is, yes, of course, Sonic Colors is still a great game. I know a lot of people take issue with it being called a 3D Sonic game, but then fine, whatever. This is one of my favorite modern Sonic games, and now that Ultimate is here, new people get to play it. If you don't have access to the Wii original, then I guess Sonic Colors Ultimate is a fine enough way to experience the game. It is a totally biased opinion, and I fully accept that, but nothing Sega and a shoddy port can provide can alter my viewpoint on this. I do and will always love Sonic Colors, and in my personal experience, none of the mountains of issues that Ultimate has is eliminating that love, especially if more of them are getting patched out over time. Whether you're playing the original or this re-release, the game is still really good. Sonic Colors represents a time where the company seemed to genuinely want to get their act together, and as of 2021, it's actually still the latest example of a main Sonic game giving us a whole new slew of worlds and environments to explore that are really original. Generations was all returning locations, Lost World was relatively generic, Forces locations came off as mostly uninspired. Yeah man, the Interstellar amusement park of Sonic Colors still deserves a lot of credit. This game will be awesome no matter what. Guys, it does me great pleasure to say that Kirby has had quite a great history since his jump to 3D. As time goes on, more and more games start to show up that feel like they justify the years and generations of fan bases begging for their existence. Dream games, essentially. Crash and Spyro got full-blown remakes, Pokemon Snap got a sequel, Sonic Mania exists. Fire Emblem is not only relevant, but it's a big deal for the company. These are all things that are just kind of accepted now, but that is after what felt like an eternity for the people that were asking for them. So, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. This is it. We're finally here. A fully 3D Kirby game. It's something that I and damn near everybody has been asking for since, I don't know, the original 3D quote-unquote debut with 64 The Crystal Shards 22 years ago? Regardless of the game's quality, this is a big deal. To say that I was excited for Kirby and the Forgotten Land, that would be a bit of an understatement. For those who may not be familiar with me, I am a hardcore Kirby fan. I've been there since the beginning, through all of the ups and downs with this franchise. I have been there for basically my entire life, and I don't think any single game in this series has ever felt as important or impactful as this one. I think it's important to view the Forgotten Land as the start of a new phase of Kirby. You see, the last 4 mainline games all worked off of the same gameplay loop. Traditional side-scrolling style with a new core gimmick in each game to spice things up from time to time. Definitely gave us some incredible adventures, but by the time Star Allies came around, the Pink Puffball's big HD debut, yeah, things were starting to get pretty stale. There were a couple of eShop games that were simple expansions of mini-games from existing handheld games. They popped up around this time. There was also a port of Epic Yarn for the 3DS too, which was really weird because the console was already basically dead at this point. Kirby was starting to feel fairly devoid of creativity as of late, that's all I'm saying. Aside from the lore, of course, because, oh my god, after the lore dump in Star Allies, I think, I think the developers really needed a nap after that insanity. But in a statement after all of Star Allies DLC was completed, the director stated that it was time to plan the next stage of Kirby. And, well, the only logical step was to finally take the jump into the 3rd dimension and finally flex some of that HD muscle for good. And the result? Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Yeah, there were plenty of reasons to be excited. Alright, that's enough preamble. Honestly, there was just a lot to go over to really understand just why this game is a big deal. But I'm really feeling that Kirby itch to scratch once again. Let's finally do it. Let's talk about Kirby and the Forgotten Land. The story begins with Kirby enjoying his carefree day around Dreamland when all of a sudden, chaos. This is the plot to every Kirby game. Big fan of Kirby's shocked face here, by the way. Big Patrick Star energy here. Up in the sky, a massive portal opens, sucking up everything around. Star blocks, Waddle Dees, a butterfly, oh god. And yes, of course, Kirby. We then cut to our hero waking up washed ashore on a beach in a totally different land, but in a setting that I swear I've seen before. And now, we gotta find out how to get back home. And also save a ton of Waddle Dees along the way. Whatever these odd little crow creatures have on their agenda, they are caging up all of the adorable Waddle Dees they can come across, and that is no good. Let's look at how cute they are. They don't deserve that. We got a new friend joining us on our adventure too. This is Elfalin, an adorable flying chinchilla with massive ears, a big nick in one of them, and I didn't trust this little thing from the moment I laid my eyes on him. I will save the sweet details for a spoiler section later on in the video, but I mean, come on. His name is basically Elf Villain, and after the previous games, this series is one of the reasons why I have trust issues. In general, yes, it is a pretty straightforward plot. I know many are probably expecting as much, but considering we now find ourselves in, essentially, a post-apocalyptic world here, plus the pause screen no longer gives us our little nuggets of lore like it used to, which is kind of upsetting, I did honestly expect the game to go a little deeper into things, similar to how Planet Robobot did. We do get a lot of information by the end of the journey, but for basically the entire time up until that point, it's all just a means to do the typical lovely Kirby stuff of running, jumping, and inhaling, but this time in a 3D setting. Like, you have all of these new enemies and bosses as a part of the brand new hostile clan known as the Beast Pack. And again, while there is context given before the credits roll, it's all basically irrelevant until then. Big, scary, furry things bad, defeat them, easy peasy. Well, aside from Tropic Woods, actually, the Forgotten Lands Wispy Woods variant is the only end-of-world boss that isn't a part of the Beast Pack. He's just there. Though, to be fair, Kirby deciding to completely obliterate a tree just because he happened to run into it is basic Ping Puffball 101, so that checks out. As for why it's not in the Beast Pack, it's the Soul Patch. It's gotta be the Soul Patch. Maybe they'll explain that in the DLC. But yes, we are finally in 3D. This is so damn cool. There was always so much speculation at just how exactly this jump was gonna happen. Would it be like that canceled GameCube game, or go for a more puzzle focus like Blowout Blast? Maybe we'll try an open world playground, something like Mario Odyssey. Well, essentially what we got is something that leans a little bit closer towards 3D World here. Linear stages with a ton of wiggle room for exploration and secret finding. And it all looks absolutely gorgeous too. Kirby games typically do have a great art style, but there is something so magical about a platformer with massive landscapes that all feel like they're real natural environments rather than places feeling a bit too video gamey, you know? Like 3D World. From amusement parks and abandoned malls to more basic tropes like winter wonderlands and desert wastelands, this is definitely the best Kirby has ever looked. Not the most creative, Planet Robobot still takes that honor, but this is still really, really good. Check this out. You can walk with this Awoofi enemy through the entire mall, and he's just going about his day. This game is amazing. And if you have ever played a single Kirby game before, it all clicks immediately. From the second you take your first steps on the beach, it is clear that Kirby controls like a dream in 3D. For one, he auto-runs now, that's really nice, as well as auto-swallows enemies as a default option, really like that as well. All of the included abilities feel great to control, hitboxes for the enemies are the perfect size, so much so that the engine was actually designed to register a hit no matter what, as long as it looks like such from the camera perspective, which is just such clever design. Projectiles have a little bit of auto-aim that ensure that you never have to be 100% precise to hit your target, but it doesn't guarantee a hit no matter what. It is just such good control, it feels so good. And then dude, Kirby has a dodge roll. First Pokemon introduced it with Arceus, and now Kirby. I am all for more games having dodge rolls, I'm just saying. And on top of that, if you time your dodge roll correctly, right as you're about to take damage, time will slow down and you can score some extra hits. This is perfect. Move over, Elden Ring, this is the game with superior combat. The levels also have challenges now. On top of collecting Waddle Dees that are hidden or simply a reward for completing the stage, there are also a lot of other little things to consider as you're playing. Finding secret rooms, removing a series of crudely drawn wanted posters, tackling some bosses either without taking damage or with a specific ability, bringing ducklings back to their mother. Oh my god, this is amazing. This is our primary replay value. The user interface is brilliant here too, by the way. If you happen to do one of the missions without realizing it, a little unobtrusive ticker will pop up to let you know, and then it just goes away. That's it. And if you finished a level while missing a few of the challenges, the game will show you one of them so you can now run through the level again looking for something new. I adore this idea. Older Kirby games have had a bad habit of hiding some unlockables behind really obscure methods. It certainly created replayability, but more so out of annoyance than intelligent design. Now that stages are more expansive than ever before, this was 100% the best way to keep the moment-to-moment gameplay interesting, and I definitely hope it comes back in the future. And this next part may be obvious, but the soundtrack is really damn good too. It's to be expected with Kirby, obviously, so yes, as we all anticipated, we have another full soundtrack of really great stuff, with catchy beats and immersive atmospheric jams all over the place. To be honest though, I don't think anything here really comes close to some of the series' best stuff, but it's still really rare to have a Kirby game with a mediocre soundtrack, and this is no different. Like, all of the level themes are either really good or just kinda good, and that is a totally perfect range to have. Although, you know what, the Invincibility theme is now a sick rock guitar remix, so maybe I'm lying to myself here. Oh, and big ups to the King Dedede theme, by the way, because oh man, it is so good in this game. It's like the best it's ever been. Oh, and the design too! Dude, the King looks more like his Crystal Shards design than ever before, and that was like his best one. God, it's so good. I love it. I love it so much. I can't wait for them to change it in the next game. The two brand new abilities are also great additions. First off, there's Drill, which lets you burrow into the ground and then pop out, impaling enemies in the process, and Ranger. They gave Kirby a gun. Kirby's packing heat now. Everybody should be terrified. He's not here to save the world from the apocalypse. He's the one who caused it. Overall, we're only working with 12 abilities here. A shockingly little amount actually, considering the previous games had more than double that, but here they all have extra polish to ensure they play great in the third dimension. As a result, it actually doesn't feel like there's any filler here. Tornado is damn satisfying to maneuver, aiming fire in 360 degrees is awesome, and the same goes for Bomb. Being able to chuck the bombs in whatever direction you see fit, it's great. You can even upgrade abilities now too, making them more powerful and changing up some of their properties in the process. And getting to experiment with all of them and seeing what the upgrades bring to the table is so much fun. Especially in the boss battles. Honestly, jumping to this third dimension has given us some of the coolest fights the series has seen yet. It is awesome. The battle with Coraline, it's so good. Kind of a neat bit of fan service here too that I noticed. For the first time ever, Hammer has its own dedicated enemy with Mookie, and Tornado has its first ever boss with Florina. I don't know, considering these abilities have been here since the beginning, kinda cool there's now more ways to get them. Oh yeah, that's right, Upgraded Needle is another massive Kirby 64 reference too. I love it. The more references to 64, the better in my opinion. Now, Sleep is still as useless as ever, but hey, it heals you at the same time. And then when you upgrade it, you pull out an entire bed, so that's pretty good. But of course, the big new gameplay gimmick this time around is Mouthful Mode. It's one of the greatest names I've ever heard in my life. Dude, when the direct happened and they showed Kirby inhale a car, and then they just cut to gameplay like nothing happened, I lost it. I love this so much. Okay, so basically the world is now littered with items that are too big for Kirby to inhale and swallow like normal, but damn it, he's certainly gonna try anyway. A vending machine with a drink can ammo count, a light bulb to brighten up dark areas, car mouth lets you drive fast and furious, plowing through everything in your path. Oh my god, you could be a stairs. Oh man, you could be filled with water and have jiggle physics. This is incredible. Mechanically, this feels very similar to Super Mario Odyssey in design. You're always just happen to run into the object you need for a puzzle that is right ahead of you. You got floors that can very clearly be broken, well, there just happens to be a cone right next to it. Go for it. Half of the fun is really just watching Kirby operate with items that are simply too big for him to get his entire mouth around, but gameplay-wise, they're all given quite a wide range of utility. My favorite is probably the ring mouth, because not only is it visually incredible, but in practice, its wind bursts are not only very powerful against enemies, but they're also integral to moving within the boats, and all of the level designs around the boat are super fun. This is realistically why it is totally fine there are only 12 copy abilities in this adventure, because on top of that there are also 13 different mouthful modes to play around with, and they essentially act the same. These are just funnier. And if you're ready to put your skills to the true test, well, each world also houses a bunch of treasure road challenges, where you put up against a series of specific obstacles for whatever ability or mouthful mode they throw at you, sorta harkening back to the ability challenges from Return to Dreamland. These are all timed too, and man, it's not required to pass the target times for them. I'm pretty sure those don't work towards 100% completion, but man, I had to go for them anyway, and some of them, man, you really can't screw up a single time. They get stressful. Here is me being 0.32 seconds off from passing one. This is what true pain feels like, I think. Forgotten Land easily has some of the best utilization of abilities and general transformations this franchise has ever seen. This is a game where Kirby can both handle a gun and become a storage container. This franchise operates on a different level. I will say though, to counter those who will inevitably say I am way too biased here, that I do think that Forgotten Land isn't as groundbreaking or inventive as it could have been in this first 3D adventure. You know, mouthful mode is incredible, but if you treat it as a sort of copyability adjacent option, then yeah, this can more or less be boiled down to it's the Kirby you know and love, just now in the third dimension. It didn't need to be any more than that. This is not a complaint. I'm just saying. Whenever you feel like taking a break and not continuing on your adventure, you can always take a pit stop back to your main hub world, Waddle Dee Town, where all of the little waddles that you've collected along your journey return to rebuild and reinvigorate the economy. There is so much to do here. This is where the ability upgrades take place using the rare stones that you get from the treasure roads as a currency. There's Kirby's house, where Nintendo likes to remind you just how many Kirby games they made in the last generation, as well as the primary location where you can take a nap. Oh my god, these games are so damn adorable. There's gacha machines now too. You see, figurines are one of the main collectibles now, similar to the keychains and the stickers of Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot respectively. And rather than grinding out some easy levels for the ones that you're missing, here is where you can use your primary star currency to get them instead. You can also zoom in on specific figures and watch Kirby look at them. Every model viewer in every game ever should have a giant Kirby in the background now, let's be honest. We got the Coliseum here, basically giving us the arena mode that we're all used to. Plow through all of the bosses and mid-bosses that you can in one piece, and get rewarded at the end. This is also where we find Meta Knight. I love that this is where they put him as a boss instead of shoehorning him in as a bad guy in the story. It is one of the better fights in the game too. There's this cool bit where he like puts his sword down for a second and you can inhale it and take the sword ability, and when Meta Knight realizes he doesn't have his trusty sword to go with, he will fly out, come back, and use the sword from Kirby's Adventure. This game is so cool. And no spoilers here, we'll talk about this later, but yes, the true arena equivalent, Ultimate Cup Z, is just as challenging as you would expect it to be. Expect a lot of torment. This is the home of 3 minigames too. First up, we have Waddle Dee's Cafe, where Kirby works retail, and you have to provide customers with their items in a timely manner, else they storm off in a huff. And there's a lunch rush portion too, where you work at a more intense pace. This, as someone who used to work retail in the past, does not really trigger the most positive of memories, but as a minigame it's fun. I promise. Next up, there's Fishing Pond. Quite frankly, any game quickly goes up a few points if it has a fishing minigame. That is the rule. It's a series of quick-time button presses, all in an effort to get the big boy. Big fan of this one. And then, oh my god, it's Tilt and Tumble 2? No, sorry, it's Tilt and Roll Kirby. Whatever, it's the same thing. I'm calling it Tilt and Tumble 2. Using the Switch's motion controls, you roll these little Kirby balls to their destinations across 3 levels, as well as hard versions of those levels. Oh my god, please, give me Tilt and Tumble 2 already, Nintendo. Like, really, come on. You guys made the expanded eShop releases of the 3DS's sub-games. There's also that canceled Tilt and Tumble 2 for the GameCube prototype from back in the day. Give it to me. Give it to me. So yeah, overall, there is no shortage of things to do here. Between the score challenges of the minigames and the Coliseum, all of the treasure roads, gotcha figures to collect, abilities to upgrade, on top of just a really fun adventure, that feeling of sort of being underwhelmed by star allies is not something to worry about here whatsoever. Forgotten Land nails it. I will say, I couldn't help but hope there was like a meta nightmare mode to unlock. That would have been amazing, given how minimal his role is in the campaign. But given how much is here, I really can't be all too upset. Much. May as well mention co-op here as well. Throughout most of the game, you can hand a controller to a friend and take control of Bandana D to save the day as a team. I love Bandana D as much as the next guy, but it is a shame that player 2 can't be their own Kirby. This means that only player 1 gets the full treasure trove of copy abilities and mouthful modes, while D is just kinda there. But the real crime is you no longer kiss your friends to share health, you high-five instead. 0 out of 10 game, Nintendo. It's pretty obvious by now, but yes, Kirby and the Forgotten Land is a massive success. It may not be the best game in the series, that is a debate that can go on for generations, but it's definitely the best since Planet Robobot, and the most exciting since, God, I don't know, Epic Yarn? I guess that was like the last time I saw as many people excited for a Kirby game before this, so yeah, it's a big deal. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic game. The developers at HAL Labs should be very pleased with themselves. But now, let's talk about the end game. Hey, since you're now in the spoiler section, that means you must know about the mini-boss bridge level later on in the game. Well, check this out. If you go off the beaten path for the hidden Maxim Tomato and climb the building off-screen, go up this ladder, collect the treasure, and then jump through this window, you'll be thrust onto an alternate path of harder battles. But you already knew that, right? I mean, there's no reason to do it either. There's no unlockable or anything like that. Celebration of coins at the end just to say, hey, you found it. But, I mean, come on, you knew that already, right? No? You didn't know that? Well, I gave you the spoiler warning for a reason, you're welcome. After taking down the mind-controlled masked DDD and freeing him from said control, our heroes try to make their escape. However, the king sacrifices himself to save a Waddle Dee that tripped, and we move on without him, being greeted by this oddly creepy title card for Lab Discoverer. Oh boy. In this elevator we find ourselves in, we suddenly get
automatic language detection activated.
Voice acting? And this oddly creepy audio that hypes up basically like a field trip to meet the ultimate life form, ID F86, a being that had to be contained because it was destroying everything in sight as soon as it showed up. We then cut to all of the taken Waddle Dees running on hamster wheels against their will, and then we hear about a warp experiment that failed that caused a portion of ID F86 to split off and hasn't been found since. We then go through these big ominous double doors, and this is Leongar, the king of the Beast Pack, who tells us that F86 once gave people power, and those people left the world behind to enter a land of dreams. And now Leongar hopes to get this power too, as well as the rest of the Beast Pack as a part of this forgotten land. All of those Waddle Dees spinning on those hamster wheels, well, that's to power this experiment. They weren't just being caged because they were too adorable, there was a much more sinister plot behind the scenes. You then fight Leongar, and of course, you take him down no problem, and then F86, whose actual name is Fecto Forgo, takes control of his mind, and then everything shall be consumed. What the f is this franchise? But yes, okay, if it wasn't obvious at this point, Elfilin is the part of Fecto Forgo that split away, and all of the energy conversion with the Waddle Dees and the wheels, these multi-dimensional portals, mind control, this was all in an attempt to restore Fecto Forgo to full power. Oh man, okay. Oh hey, check that out, it escaped its confinement too! That's cool and not scary at all. Ah, it then absorbs the minions of the Beast Pack and grows into this obscene amorphous blob. That's the nightmare fuel I was waiting for. Then you gotta fight it while also running away from it? Oh my god, what is happening now? Just when you thought you were safe, unfortunately, it is able to grab Elfilin and scurry up to the roof, where we now meet Fecto Elfilis, the true final boss. I will not shy away from it, I definitely got baited to thinking that Elfilin itself was the main villain, but you know what, man? I don't care. This is so damn cool, and Elfilis is such a fantastic design. Everything about this is exactly what I wanted. Oh god, and then the final segment. Okay, so then you defeat it and then opens up one final portal and tries to bring the entirety of Popstar in to collide with the planet that you're on, but with perfect timing, a giant big rig comes in and falls to the ground, and then of course, you're able to mouthful mode it. Why wouldn't you be able to? And then you go on this insane race against time across these falling buildings as this rock remix of the Invincibility theme plays, and then you got some quick time segments that's pushing back Elphalus's energy, and then you obliterate it like it's a Dragon Ball Z villain. What did this game turn into? This is amazing. Finally, the day is saved. Elphalin sacrifices himself in the final moments to close the massive portal that's still there. It's obvious before the credits that he's actually totally fine. All of the members of the Beast Pack are now free from their mind control, and man, this was exactly what I wanted. I do kind of wish the game teased this a little bit more throughout the story rather than giving me extreme whiplash by the end, but honestly, that whiplash was part of the greatness. I fully expect Fecto Forgo, or something to that nature, returning in the future, similar to Dark Matter being a recurring villain of before. And I am very excited to see what insanity it'll bring with it. But that's not really the end though, because as a post-game, we then unlock the Isolated Isles Forgo Dreams, where you run through truncated and harder versions of every previous world, and collect pieces of Leon Gar's soul so we can go to where Forgo left him and restore him to his normal self, Leon. This is all a dream world created by Fecto Forgo in an effort to regain its strength, and build up an army of strong beasts in the process. When it comes to the gameplay here, I really like this. This does sort of act like the previous game's Meta Nightmare or DDD Tour, but you just play as Kirby here instead, and it does kind of double as a hard mode. Especially for the bosses, every single boss is harder, they have a new color palette, a bunch of new moves. Oh man, that's so cool. These are some of the best fights in the game, without a doubt. The game is also very friendly about letting you know if you've gotten every single soul fragment in an area before moving on to the next one. Thank God, makes this process a whole lot more seamless. It all culminates with a battle against Forgo Leon, where it becomes very apparent that Fecto is really trying its best to get its way. But because you're the almighty Kirby, you take Leon out like he's nothing, and then it's time to finally take out Soul Forgo itself. Uh-oh. Fun fact, every Kirby fan is afraid of butterflies. That's part of the canon. That one butterfly that got sucked in during the opening cutscene? Damn it, I should have seen this coming. Wouldn't you know it? It's Morpho Knight! Hey man, okay, going forward, if we're just gonna expect Morpho Knight to be the secret final boss rather than Galacta Knight, I will be more than okay with that. This fight is so damn cool, and I hate butterflies now. A lot of Fecto Forgo's powers can be seen in Morpho's moveset too. I'm pretty sure the idea is Morpho isn't just super powerful on his own, but he absorbs whatever he comes in contact with. The future of this dude is gonna be terrifying. But before long, you take him down as well, and we finally have the chance to restore Leon to his original pure form. And all is finally well with the world. You see, now we go back to the Coliseum, where we have access to Ultimate Cup Z, where you go through all of the harder forms of the bosses from the Isolated Isles. And Morpho is here to fight, of course, as to be expected, but it turns out Soul Forgo gained a new body after absorbing Morpho Knight's power, turning into Chaos Elphalus. This never ends. Of course, it has a bunch of new scary moves to deal with, but okay, that's fine. You eventually take that down too. And then it turns into an evil blob of darkness, and then it quickly sucked me in and killed me. So that was fun. I had to do the entire Coliseum again after this part, so that's fine. You know, it's fine. Also, HAL Laboratories, you think you're slick, you're not getting past me. One of the moves here is a direct callback to Draucia's soul from Canvas Curse. Really, really cool. I am just so happy that no matter what this series does, what dimension we're in, where Kirby puts his mouth on, it's always a safe assumption that we're gonna attempt to dethrone God at the end. And damn it, Forgotten Land succeeds with that as well. I love this game so much. Oh man, okay, so yeah, that was a whole lot to go over. But yes, Kirby in the Forgotten Land. God, I am just so happy the era of 3D Kirby is finally here. In an interview with the development team, it was immediately confirmed that yes, there will be more 3D and potentially even 2D games in the future. The director believes that Kirby has, quote, unlimited potential, and he hopes the teams can be, quote, even more wild and free when it comes to following games. The years of mediocrity and subpar releases may be over, my friends. A new golden era of Kirby is here, and I cannot wait to see what comes next. It is a damn good time to be a Kirby fan. In the grand scheme of things, this is not my favorite Kirby game. Planet Robobot still has my heart, and actually a few other Kirby games as well. But if you wanted to make an argument that this is the best that Kirby has ever been, it would be totally valid. And considering Star Allies got a whole bunch of DLC post-launch, who knows, we may be revisiting this game in the future like we did with that one. Back in my Kirby's Dream Buffet video, I said this: next year, we're gonna have a bit of a break, right? That means that, you know, they'll step back and they'll be like, okay, maybe this year we don't make 1 or 2 Kirby games in the same year and shadow drop them on Twitter. That's going to happen. That video released August 28th, 2022. They announced this game 2 weeks later. Dude, like, there's really nothing easier than being a Kirby fan, like, honestly. If you're anti-Kirby, somehow, and you're annoyed with all of the preferential treatment this franchise gets from Nintendo, I understand, I really do. We just gotta sit here and the coolest things ever will happen to us, and Captain Falcon is still dead. It's like this company can't let a single direct go by without announcing something for Kirby. Forgotten Land and Dream Buffet were still both pretty fresh, and bam, doesn't matter. Now the Wii game Return to Dreamland is getting remastered for the Switch very soon. okay, yeah, sure, why not? Kirby's Return to Dreamland? Quite frankly, I did figure that when this game was going to come to the Switch, I did expect a bit of a trilogy pack with Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot as well. Would have made for a sick 30th anniversary celebration pack, and I mean, hey, if Miitopia of all games can get remade for the Switch, why can't those? But I think that's just me, as a Kirby fan, accustomed to being a spoiled little brat. I can hear it now. Kirby Triple Deluxe? Deluxe. Easy money right there. Well, I mean, there simply aren't enough Kirby games for me to play. Though, that being said, right before RTDLDX released, Nintendo announced in another Direct that, you know what, Tilt and Tumble and Amazing Mirror for the Game Boy and GBA Switch Online apps respectively, those are coming, and it's a bigger deal than you would initially think. Yeah, these are usually just typical ROM drops and that's it. I mean, Dreamland 1 got released as soon as the app did, but actually, this means we will have an official console port of Tilt and Tumble for the first time with native motion controls. Incredible. I don't know if those GameCube holding speedrunners will make the jump over to the Switch Pro Controller, but damn it, it's a tilt in the right direction. And Amazing Mirror is gonna be on an emulator that has official online play. Oh my god? I know these emulators just inherently have online play, so it's to be expected, but dude, Amazing Mirror Online, that's incredible. And just those announcements on top of all the additions to this remaster, man, like I said, us Kirby fans really just have to sit here and relax, and the best things will happen. Sorry about the mad ramblings of a Kirby fan here going through a really good time in my life. This timeline is treating someone like me really good right about now. But the star of the show for today, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. It's an interesting choice. I'm all for more Kirby content, obviously, as well as more Wii games getting ported. Big fan of that as well. It's just been less than a year since Forgotten Land, and I feel really weird that we're already here. Though, I guess, realistically, the timing does make a little bit more sense than you would initially think. Return to Dreamland is now the 4th Kirby game to get the remake treatment, 5th if you count Superstar Stacker as a remake. I don't know why you would, but some people do. And if you look at the timing in between the original's release as well as the remake's release, you can see that we're looking at roughly 4,100 days, which isn't too far off from the duration of time between Adventure and Superstar and their respective remakes. The timing actually makes total sense. Extra Epic Yarn came out the soonest, and hey, maybe that's why it's the weakest one. You gotta shoot closer to that 4,000 day mark, that's the ticket. This is a moment that doubled as not only a fun piece of trivia, but also a reminder that we're all progressively getting older. Look at me reviewing the original Wii game all those years ago. This little idiot had no clue what the next few years had in store for him. Also, did you know that in Japan they kept Wii in the name, so it's Kirby Wii Deluxe? Did you also know that while the game was called Kirby's Adventure Wii in Europe originally, they went ahead and took the Return to Dreamland name, so now the name's different depending on what console, as opposed to America where it's Return to Dreamland the entire time. Does anyone else find this interesting, or am I way too far gone? Man, I still remember when this game was originally revealed as just Kirby Wii. It's easy to forget just how important this game was for this franchise. Kirby's Return to Dreamland? When did he ever leave, right? Well, believe it or not, there did used to be a time where Kirby didn't get love every 20 minutes from Nintendo. After 64, the Crystal Shards in 2000, the franchise was mostly relegated to spin-offs and remakes, and the platformers that did release, Amazing Mirror and Squeak Squad, while both fun in their own regards, it was evident that they didn't have the amount of love and polish that the games deserved, probably in part due to being handed off to another developer, Flagship. Only in 2010 with Epic Yarn did we finally see Kirby getting the big spotlight again. It had been 10 years since Kirby felt like a big deal. There was that glimmer of hope with a GameCube game, but as we all know, that was in development purgatory and eventually scrapped with elements from that build showing up in later games. And speaking of, did you see that new footage of that GameCube game was actually discovered randomly in 2022? That's... wow. Footage once thought to be lost just happened to show up on YouTube 17 years later. That's... what? And if we go even further down this rabbit hole, remember when Nintendo dropped an Iwata Asks segment that revealed that not only was that GameCube game canceled, but there were 2 other games in development too that never saw the light of day? Well, obviously the 4-player co-op one was a big selling point for Return, as well as Star Allies in the future. There's this sort of isometric one that managed to finally show up in Blowout Blast, obviously expanded upon greatly with Forgotten Land. But this third one here, the side-scroller with a cel-shaded art style? Well, how about that? Obviously, art style preference is subjective, whether or not you dig the remaster's outline style. You could argue that Battle Royale had a similar art style, but nobody actually played that game. I could just be grasping at thin air here, that is totally possible, but I'm going to call Return to Dreamland Deluxe closure after so many years of rare information drops for canceled Kirby games. And that's actually really awesome. Yeah, I think I have an unhealthy obsession. I think that much is clear. Oh, this is a Kirby cup that they released at Kung Fu Tea locations. It had like a pink berry drink. It was to celebrate the release of Forgotten Land. It was pretty good from what I remember. You can't get it anymore. It was like a year ago at this point. But I kept the cup. And I still use it. That tastes just like Kirby. I saw some people say that because Sand Kirby is in this game, you thought I was gonna, like, for a gag, eat sand? What's wrong with you people? Important question right out of the gate. In this remaster, does King Dedede still do the thing on the title screen? The game's perfect. The story begins in the peaceful world of Dreamland. Oh, it's the butterfly. I am shattered beyond repair and there is no saving me. A mysterious ship crashes, Magolor needs your help to repair it. It's a pretty typical story. Something bad is happening and you're the good guy, so you gotta go save the day. That makes a lot of sense. There's not a whole lot more to elaborate on here. Magolor is one of the most trustworthy characters in this franchise, and I will do anything he says. But you know what? This whole new King Dedede thing really has me thinking far too hard about this newer redesign. Club Penguin looking ass. They've given this dude so many redesigns in his life, they can't stick to one. It's a miracle we got the same design for 2 games back to back. We got this adorable little ball of Chub in 64, this odd, always mean looking design in Triple Deluxe. Wasn't bad, he just looked very angry. His anime look, he was always kind of too big, always put me off, not gonna lie. I think I'm also in the minority of not really digging the Star Allies design. Like, Buff Dedede was funny for a minute, but even when he's not buff, this guy right here, he's a little too long for my liking. And then Forgotten Land came out and gave us a king that was almost perfect. The adorable 64-styled big blue ball of simultaneous happiness and anger, but modernized, just with a pretty cool tribal look that worked well for that game given his insane boss battles. So in Deluxe, having that model with his classic outfit, dare I say we have reached peak Dedede. I definitely like this more than the original Wii model. But points also go to Smash Dedede. That's pretty damn close to the top 2. And why Stone Kirby in this game can summon Star Allies Dedede and not New Dedede, I don't know. I'm starting to believe in a Dedede multiverse. Also, on the topic of redesigns, shout out to this Twitter user here for pointing out that the enemy Waddle Dees and the friend Waddle Dees in this game use the models from Star Allies and Forgotten Land respectively, based off of pretty slight differences in the face. This is pretty important information. Really doing a great job doing anything but talking about the actual game itself. I apologize about that. While getting a brand new return to form Kirby game was actually super refreshing back in 2011, nothing changes the fact that, yep, this is a Kirby game alright. Return to Dreamland was Nintendo's attempt to take the formula of Kirby games that worked so well in the past, like Adventure and Superstar, and just polish the hell out of it. Something they would continue to improve upon with the 3DS sequels. The basic mechanics all feel nice and tight. All of the copy abilities do the Superstar thing of having multiple attacks that can be pulled off pending your button inputs. Each level has multiple shiny things to collect, so you actually have to pay attention to your surroundings instead of just plowing through the levels. And it's all bundled together with a great presentation for both the visuals and the soundtrack. All really great stuff. And even back on the Wii, I always thought this game looked really nice. All of the colors just pop, the foreground pieces are nicely detailed, and if you ever just stare off into the background, the amount of detail that goes into every single landscape is actually kinda stunning. It's easy to not even consider them because you're always running through them and focusing on what's in front of you instead of what's behind you, but if you ever get a second to chill out and just look at the back, there's a lot going on there. And then we jump on over to Deluxe, and yeah, there's the matter of the most noticeable difference on the surface. We have outlines now. Rather than simply having the game look like it's running through Dolphin on max settings, we actually have a pretty noticeable art style shift. The foreground and background elements have a lot more detail, some areas go for a bit more of a pastel-y color palette, I think it's very pleasing. And yeah, all of the characters have outlines now. Interesting choice, not like the characters ever blended into the background from my experience in the past, but for what it's worth, I do really love how this looks. I prefer when art styles have a bit more extra artistic personality to them, and realistically, Return to Dreamland was always relatively uninspired in terms of its style. Yeah, incredibly detailed, for sure, but grassland, desert, underwater, snow, volcano. Some levels later on are a little bit more memorable, like the mechanical stages, and especially the Sky Tower, but in general, it is pretty standard stuff. Not a problem necessarily, but certainly doesn't stand out compared to some of the environments and themes of the 3DS games. So for me, this new style adds a lot to help Return appear more striking. Granted, I do think the outlines could have still been an option. Like 2 days after the demo released, there was a mod that removed the outlines and it looks fine. But whatever, I still like them. It's even more visually interesting when we compare this directly with the Kirby adventure built for the Switch, Star Allies. Even with the base Wii version, yeah, I think Return looks better. So clearly, Deluxe blows that right out of the water. Star Allies just didn't really have much of a style that let things pop as much as Deluxe does. And also, gotta say, it's really nice having a console Kirby game now that runs at 60 FPS. It's about damn time. I've said this once, I'll say it a million times, I am no frame rate snob, but when all of the other modern Kirby games run at 60 and Star Allies ran at 30, it looks kinda gross. It was fine with Forgotten Land since that game was an entirely different format, but for the 2D games, it was jarring to me in 2018, still jarring in 2023. And hell, in recent years, there was even a mod developed just to push Star Allies to 60, and it looks so much better. All I'm saying is yes, Return to Dreamland Deluxe looks really good. It's no Metroid Prime Remastered, because Kirby's better. The soundtrack is just as good as it ever was, that much was a given, though there has been some changes here too, mostly in regards to what songs play where. One of the secret HAL rooms now plays music from Dream Buffet, the mini boss tower in Nutty Noon now plays a remix of the Superstar Boss Battle theme instead of the King Dedede theme. The same stage in Extra Mode plays Stage of the Partners from Kirby Fighters 2, the second phase of the HRD3 fight uses Roar of Dedede from Forgotten Land now, which is an incredible change. Not a ton of differences here, but just plenty of really good fan service. Wow, the new game in a series with consistently good games is good. I am shocked and appalled with this information. You see, what I was most interested in, what my big dumb baby brain was interested in, was just what was going to be new about this release. You know, when it comes to remakes, remasters, re-releases, whatever you want to call them, Nintendo's track record is all over the place. We could get Bowser's Fury, we could get new funky mode. And for this one, I mean, come on now, what are you gonna have in this Kirby game that's gonna be good for new players, but also people like me who have played this game like a dozen times in the past? I'm not lying, like a dozen times. Like I said, unhealthy obsession. First and foremost, you can now taunt with the right stick. Yeah, the Wii game didn't have that, Deluxe is better, 10 out of 10. Okay, but for real now, they added diagonal swimming to this version. This is a game changer, you do not understand how exciting this is. For the first time in one of these Kirby remasters, remakes, whatever you want to call them, we have brand new abilities. First up, we got Mecha. You're a Gundam now, this is sick. You got a laser you can charge up, you can shoot some projectiles of the fire and electric variety, you got a sweet jetpack, and these super powered hands too. This is pretty badass honestly, though a bit unwieldy at times if I'm being honest. Like there's this really cool charge forward backflip laser combo that looks awesome, but I feel like it doesn't do as much damage as it should. It looks like it would be devastating, but it feels like nothing actually happens. The outfit is certainly better than its utility. Maybe I just need to get better at it, I don't know. Make sure to put it in the next game, you cowards. And then we got Sand. Oh my god, this one's incredible. Harnessing the power of Pocket Sand, you can attack in every direction in a handful of different ways, and it feels like every single grain of sand Kirby pulls out does incredible damage. Dude, like, just hold the block button and you're invulnerable forever. And then you can shoot out into the sky doing a surprising amount of damage. Dude, Sand is insane. Both abilities each have a new challenge room in the Star Cutter now, and that's pretty cool. Considering how strict those rooms are to get gold rankings, let alone platinum rankings, these are the perfect ways to learn what these abilities have in store. Yo, even the Sand enemy is cuter than the Mecha one, like, this is not the outcome I expected. Oh, and also I can't forget to mention that Festival from Star Allies is in this game now. Hooray! The only other time new abilities were added to a re-release, it was the Ravel abilities in Extra Epic Yarn, and considering that game didn't have copy abilities in the first place, I thought their inclusion was unnecessary, honestly, but here, yeah, they're fine. They don't really fill a void that the original game was lacking, but the more power-ups, the better in my opinion. Need I remind you just how good Sand is again? I got into an argument on Twitter about whether or not Sand is the 69th ability in this franchise, and I'm sorry to report that, no, it's not. Though I get the excitement. Sure, if you count like the anime exclusives, and does anybody count normal as an ability? Sorry, that's weird if you do. Strictly speaking, from the games, from all of these main adventures on Nintendo consoles, Mecha and Sand are abilities 67 and 68 respectively. I would know. I did a whole ass list ranking all of them. How are some of these people trying to tell me that I'm wrong? That video had 67 entries and didn't even include Sand because they revealed it shortly after I made that video because Nintendo actually hates me and wanted that video irrelevant as soon as possible. In regards to where I would put these abilities on that ranking list, I think I was pretty dead on with Mecha's placement. I think mid-20s is the perfect spot for that one, but Sand? Like, dude, like, I don't know, maybe in my top 10? This definitely became my arena go-to ability. Stupid Galactonite here did not stand a chance. And this dude's like a god. But at the end of the day, what this does mean is it doesn't matter what the next Kirby game is, what the next ability is, no matter what, 69 is right around the corner. Interestingly enough, some of the returning abilities got modified as well. The Energy Sword move that debuted in Triple Deluxe is here now. Fire has a couple of new moves as well, one when you're at a standstill and one when you're rolling. And the Hammer Flip move that you're really used to now because it's super powerful and also destroys bosses. I totally forgot that that wasn't in the original Wii game. It's here now though. This is so much to take in. One of my favorite things with these Kirby games and the fan service is the stone transformations, and we have a couple new ones here. Magolor on the Star Cutter, Kirby from Forgotten Land, the Fat Boy from Dream Buffet, really like that one. And this one did show up in Star Allies, but hey, it's QB on Mount Fuji. Some techniques have also been modified for King Dedede, Meta Knight, and Bandana D in co-op to more match how they played in more recent games, and that's pretty cool too. Found this out because even though I'm not a huge fan of co-op in my platformers, you can still play as these characters in the arena mode. Hell yeah. I know I'm gonna sound selfish, but if there was anything I do wish they added, I do think the challenge stages from Dream Collection would have been a really cool bonus. That content is still trapped on the Wii, so it would have been nice to, you know, not have that be the case. I have to assume there was some hesitation because Smash was an ability for one of them, and Smash isn't in this game, and they had to prioritize Festival instead, you know. I get it. But considering this was likely their only chance for this content to come back, that's kind of upsetting. This would have also been a pretty cool time to bring back the Super Spark and Super Cutter abilities that are cut content. Why not? A re-release is always the perfect time to bring some of that stuff back. Oh yeah, the super abilities. One of the big gimmicks with Return to Dreamland were these areas where you would get a fancy super ability, you start shining something fierce, and with the push of a button, you get essentially a little screen nuke. It's really cool, and Kirby is really cute while doing so. Mechanically, I never really thought these were that great. Once you get past that flashy style, you feel powerful, for sure, but these rooms that you get these abilities in equate to just holding forward and pressing a button when something dare stands in your path. And at the end of the day, they were just a means to getting to these portals that transport you to Purgatory for a little chase segment and a mini boss fight. It gets the job done, but it's not something I'm super excited about. Like, I think Super Suck and Triple Deluxe is way better. Gameplay-wise, it's pretty formulaic. Except for that one time that you become the head of a snowman, that part's perfect. But hey, back on topic with differences with this deluxe version, each of the abilities now have a lot better animation when you first get them. It used to be when you would get the ability, Kirby would do a nice little, hey, look, I got it, and then you'd get into the gameplay. But here, oh, the camera's swooping, Kirby's a lot more emotional about this whole ordeal. This is great. I love this. It's so nice. But just in case you don't like those and want to get right back to the action, well, now you can skip the cutscenes too. Couldn't do that in the original. They've added the Gigant Sword and the Morpho Sword to the Ultra Sword lineup. That's pretty sick. Enemies will now fly and hit the screen with intense force when you take them out with one of the attacks. That's just a cool touch. If we're going for style over substance with the whole super ability thing, doubling down on the style was certainly the right call. I like these changes a lot. Super Suck is still better though. They even brought back the old animations from the Wii game during one of the final boss fights. That's a pretty cool throwback. And outside of the abilities themselves, there's even more minor visual changes, like this part early on in the game with the Super Fire ability where you burn down this big tree in the original and the portal just shows up in the middle. Well, now there's a little cutscene where the tree will burn down and fall into the background. Cool! That was my major complaint with the original game. Ooh, the screen transitions are new here too. There is so much visual polish added to Deluxe. Oh man, what else? Okay, so there's a Helper Magalore mechanic now, where Magalore will give you health when it's low and pick you up when you fall down pits. That's nice of him. Certainly not something that someone with evil intentions would ever do. I like him a lot. He's got a bright future. You can also now store items Super Mario World style. Sure? The game never really needed to be easier, but hey, anything for accessibility to newer players is fine by me. Conversely, the harder extra mode is still here, unlocked after beating the game with roughly 70% completion, and like in the original, it's the same adventure, just made a bit more difficult. Harder bosses with some cosmetic changes, more enemies, smaller health bar with less health pickups, and an extra mode exclusive boss near the end of the game, which yes, is a throwback to the cancelled GameCube game. In Deluxe's extra mode, there are even more enemies and obstacles compared to the original, but quite frankly, without direct comparison, I couldn't tell the difference. I still died a bunch because of the shorter health bar. I just can't tell if the enemy that killed me was in the original or not. So sue me, I'm a fake Kirby fan. There's a new past adventure screen on the main menu now, continuing the current trend of Nintendo reminding us just how often they make these damn games with no sign of stopping anytime soon. They added amiibo support so you can get item drops whenever you want. Okay. Of course, co-op is still present, but unfortunately, there is no online play for this. There never was any indicator that there was going to be online, but hey, once again, I was never a co-op platformer guy, wasn't going to affect me either way, but I can tell that there were a lot of people online who are upset at the omission. And if you are one of the upset ones, consider this. He's actually called Bandana Waddle Dee in this one. He was just Waddle Dee in the original but happened to wear a bandana. Instead, online play is restricted to the new minigame mode, Merry Magoland. Because standard minigame selection menus are for losers, and Kirby is not a loser, damn it. Oh, no, not the whole minigame mode, my apologies. Just one. Just one of them is online. Yay. Oh man, this Magalore dude is great. He is the best. He's taken me out of pitfalls, he's giving me items, and he made an entire ass theme park. Dude, this guy, come on now. He can do nothing wrong. We got a whopping 10 sub-games in this one, the most of any game in the franchise, holy cow. For new games, we have Magalore's Tome Trackers, where a specific book cover gets shown, and it's a race to get to it in the pile first. Plus, you're all wearing school caps. It's adorable. And Booming Blasters, where we give everybody a gun and have a good old round of deathmatch. I'm glad Kirby continues to practice his Second Amendment rights. As for the other 8 sub-games, they're all returning from older Kirby games. Yes! We have Egg Catcher from Adventure, Samurai Kirby from Superstar, Checkerboard Chase from 64, Bomb Rally from Nightmare in Dreamland, Crackety Hack from Amazing Mirror, Smash Ride from Squeak Squad, Kirby on the Draw from Superstar Ultra, and Ninja Dojo returning from the original Return to Dreamland. This is so damn cool. The music when you're on the difficulty selection screens are remixes of each game's respective menus. The victory screens are all identical from their source games too, like the Kirby 64 award screen is exactly the same, yes! Listen, I've never been someone who's hard to please, okay? Anything remade from this franchise I think is the coolest thing. Seeing Egg Catcher show up after so long in HD, the music is remade, both Kirby and Dedede have the baby chicks popping out of their mouths. This is peak Kirby right here. It's just a shame we don't see the chicks popping out of Meta Knight's masks or Waddle Dee's mouth. I mean, the anime shows that he can eat, so they could have put that in the game. And then the online mode in question is a separate entity entirely, Samurai Kirby 100, where you and 99 other Kirbys around the world see who can press the A button the fastest. You could, quite frankly, tell me these are all CPU players, and I couldn't tell you the difference. I don't know why this is online. I feel a stronger connection to Manager Magalore telling me stats. I was about to say that this was an incredibly dumb inclusion, but then I managed to get first, so now I would be upset if this wasn't here. In all of these editions, we did lose Scope Shot though. This is so sad. I did always like Ninja Dojo more, so I don't really feel the same pain, but kind of strange that they decided to get rid of one of them at all. Adding salt to the wound, the second HAL room now plays the Scope Shot title theme. Why? Why did HAL go for the throat on this one? Oh yeah, before I forget, they also added a third HAL room to the game that wasn't in the original. Dude, this company loves the Kirby franchise so much, it's wild. This is true love right here. Alongside all of the sub-games, Merry Magoland comes with 100 missions, and I mean, that's pretty refreshing. Usually the sub-games are just there for a fun little distraction and nothing more, but now there is a whopping 100 achievements to go for. Many of them are very basic. You beat all the difficulties, for example, do particularly well in some harder difficulties like catching 20 eggs in Egg Catcher level 3, and play each of the games with a specific mask, which, yes, there are unlockable masks in this game as well. This adds a lot of gameplay time to the 100% goal right here, because once you finish all 100 of these achievements, and you think you're done, stupid Magolor throws another 20 at you that are super tough. Tome Tracker's level 3, winning this mode with 18 points, made me want to commit crimes. Completing all of these back to back took me about 3.5 hours, though admittedly, I did definitely surprise myself with some of these. Like, one of these is to get at least 20th place in Samurai Kirby 100, and I hit first place on my second attempt, so yeah, you know what, I am gonna brag actually, I feel really good about that one. Merry Magoland, the happiest place on Earth, would return and spend too much money there again. Look at it just sitting there in the background at the start of Nutty Noon now. I love it. It's like it's a real place. Oh yeah, can't really gloss over the mask thing. It's kind of a cute addition. For extra fan service, you can unlock the faces of a bunch of characters throughout the series by collecting these Merry Magoland tickets. It's pretty cute. I mean, definitely something to make co-op a little bit more interesting, but some of them also make noises. So getting to run through these levels as Kirby making masked DDD sounds is pretty cool. That's kind of fun. Fun fact, if you wear the Kind mask, you have a more powerful bubble attack underwater. The attention to detail in this game is nuts. There's a couple of deep cuts on the selection too, Drossia and Zero masks? Okay, that's cool. Getting to see newer renditions of Nago, Peach, and Choo Choo, that's nice, I like that a lot. Can't believe Dark Nebula is here. Old friend. I'm really crying in the club right now. And dude, Pick and Mine, are you serious? The Rick and Kind counterparts from Dreamland 3 that you saw on one screen each and that's it? I love this. Sadly, Coo didn't have a counterpart in that game, so grayscale Coo instead. Suck it up, sport, you'll be fine. The only issue with this screen is that Yellow Kirby is just called Yellow Kirby now, and after Dream Buffet had the audacity to bring Kibi back into the spotlight, this will not stand. All right, the moment that many of you have been waiting for, spoiler time. What? Spoilers? Isn't this a 10-plus-year-old game? What could there possibly be to spoil in this current year? Well, listen here, idiot, you big Dumbo. You see the back of the box here? Magolor Epilogue, Brave and Extra Quest after the ending. There's new stuff. And I got thoughts. Hey, you know how Magolor betrays you at the end of the story and you banish him into the Shadow Realm? Yo, that's crazy. This is why Kirby fans everywhere have trust issues and thought Elflin was gonna stab you in the eyes in Forgotten Land. Well, Magolor Epilogue is here to let us know just what Magolor was up to after said banishment. With his outfit in tatters, Magolor wakes up in another dimension, similar to the chase levels from the main campaign. On your brief travel here, you run into a fruit fragment. You get told to collect more. Go. Gameplay-wise, Magolor does play quite differently than Kirby, sort of similar to how he played in the Star Allies guest star mode, but with a twist. Throughout the stages, you collect these magic spheres, and with them, you can upgrade all of your attributes, like all of them. The speed of your horizontal and vertical shots, the effectiveness of your shield, how much longer your specials will stick around, stuff like that. And while upgrading moves in like any game is inherently satisfying, you get the benefit of being able to grow longer chains during the gameplay. You see, you're not just collecting magic spheres by walking into them, you get them from defeating enemies, and get even more if you keep attacking them in a fast manner. And doing something like upgrading your trickery attribute benefits you because sometimes that will lengthen how long your chain could last without any activity. Me? Get up to my sneaky dirty tricks again? I would never. Unless no one is looking. Learning the level designs to chain the best combos and go for the highest points is really the name of the game here, and it is way more satisfying than I thought it was going to be. Typically, these extra modes like Meta Nightmare and DD Tour just play through the main game with a new character, and sure, it's not like visually we got anything crazy here with Magolor, but still, by having unique designs, sometimes pulled from the main game's chase segments, most times not, made for a consistently fun adventure for the roughly 2 hours it took to complete it. And even the bosses are more changed than I expected them to be. These aren't simply the main game bosses with the color swap, no. They also have new names. And based on said names, you can tell that these battles now have element properties too. It's pretty cool stuff. Or shocking stuff. Really just depends on the fight. And if you do your due diligence and pause the gameplay while you're in the battle, you can get a little bit of extra lore. This is the good stuff here. And when doing so, you can tell that all of these guys are working for a bigger bad guy. But wait a second. I thought Magolor was the bad guy. Who's badder than this guy? Well, once all of the fruit pieces are together, making a gem apple, yes, very important detail, Magolor then battles another Grand Doomer. Pretty cool. I mean, it's got some different attacks like the other bosses, nothing too special here, goes down pretty easily, and then this portal opens up. Dude, like, come on, man, like, what do you mean? We got a biblically accurate Wispy Woods here as the final boss? What is this? God, I love Kirby so much, dude. You see, why this is a thing is because the gem apple seed that you freed from beating the crowned doomer immediately gets attached to the master crown, the thing that turned Magolor scary in the main campaign. So, simple math, you have a seed that will turn into a tree, combined with this source of evil, bam, monstrous tree god. And it's a pretty fun battle too, finally being able to use all of Magolor's skills against a unique boss fight that isn't simply a reskin of something that Kirby fought before. It's really satisfying. This one move that he does when he comes like crashing down on you and then will continue to go into the ground and then stare at you, this is a tree jump scare. But even still, bang bang boom, you take him out no problem, and once you're done, Magolor finds a conveniently placed sword. Well, isn't that nice? He then uses his powers to make it gigantic in size, has one final anime clash of power, and then slashes it in half, defeating it. As this franchise continues to dethrone another god. You know, typical Kirby things. But you may be asking, what's to become of Magolor after all of this? Well, thankfully, a new portal to the outside world opens up, and after wiping away a single tear, oh my god, poor baby, he jumps in for hopefully a brighter future. And if you pay attention to the credits images, you can see Magolor pops up in a new yet kind of familiar land alongside the Gem Appleseed. He sets up a shop in this brand new village to do some business, and just like that, Team Kirby Clash Deluxe and Super Kirby Clash have been injected into the canon. It took a few years, but now we know why. He was finally nice all of a sudden and dressed in green. Looks good on him too. I approve the new digs. See, man, what did I tell you? Nicest guy you ever met. You played Super Kirby Clash, right? He's like super nice in that game. It was just the crown that was messing him up. He's a great dude. In that game, if I remember correctly, he was like giving you really good things, right? That was helping you out in your quest, but they also kind of required actual money. They were microtransactions. He's responsible for microtransactions. This guy's evil. Magolor Epilogue is awesome. It's a little annoying that it's locked behind playing the whole main game to get the new stuff, but considering the plot is based off of the endgame plot twist, I guess it makes sense. Leave it to Hal to add story closure to a spin-off in what is seemingly just a run-of-the-mill remaster. I think when directly compared to another remake, Superstar Ultra, that game provided more new stuff than Return to Dreamland Deluxe did, but Magolor Epilogue raises the bar for those post-adventure, alternate playable character modes. Can't wait for the next Kirby remake where you can play as the Dream Fork all of a sudden, because we have to know why it popped up in front of Kirby that one time. I have so many questions after Dream Buffet, man, I need them answered. Worth quickly mentioning the arena here as well. I mean, yeah, it does act the same way it always did, typical boss rush, but True Arena got some notable changes. Not only does it add the Magolor Epilogue fights, so you can now battle biblically accurate Wispy Woods with Kirby, but the Magolor Soul fight, not only does he move faster and hit harder than he used to, not only does he still utilize the same super ability attacks that he did before, but also he conjures up sand tornadoes and shoots from the mecha cannons. This is a scary fight. And if you haven't done this battle yet, you can thank me later for this information, because getting 21 fights in and dying to attacks that you didn't see coming, I would be furious and snap my tiny Switch cartridge in half. No thank you. Now you can tackle this with a steady mind. You're likely still going to be stressed out, but at least it'll be a little bit more steady. But with that all in mind, that wraps up the entire Kirby RTDLDX package. It's a good game. Are you surprised? This video is longer than my Forgotten Land one. I don't know why I'm like this. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is an excellent remaster. They took a great game and made it a lot better. That's all it needed to be. It's a new Kirby release. Of course it's good.